Welcome everyone to day 2 of the 2022 third annual Sofa Summit.
Yes.
Man, that's a mouthful. We got Mark Hart and Sean Taggy here from Memphis Investment Properties and Reedy and Company, and we're fired up for the day. It's going to be absolutely action-packed. Starting off, we have our man Sean Taggy. Sean, what are you going to talk about today?
So yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the current market, where we are globally in the real estate market, and some other stats and data on that, just to kind of so you can have a pulse of where things are going. I'll be talking about leadership and communication and how to really get your point across and feel understood and let others know that they're understood as well. And then also I'll be going over what is a cash out refinance and how that really can totally tip the scale of your investing and help you supercharge your investments.
Love that. So then we're also going to have a client testimonial from an investor that actually lives just a couple minutes away from me. He's got over 150 doors and he just started in the last decade. So he's a full-time real estate investor. He's living the dream. He's the man. So it'll be great to share his experience. Then next up, we're going to talk about taxes and basically how to pay no tax on the cash flow of your rental properties. Because if you are, you're doing something wrong, and you definitely need to make sure that you tune in.
Yeah, that's great. So then after that, we're going to have two of our best lenders here, Greg Iverson and Aaron Chapman. They'll be going off, they are one of the top 50 lenders, both of them, even top 20. They're amazing. They know so much. They're real estate investors themselves, so they'll be sharing their knowledge on lending and finance. Also, we'll be hearing from Cash Flow Tactics on Infinite Banking. They are amazing guys. We love having them around. They're really fun. And then also we'll show a before and after video, right? Love seeing how a house looked before and then what type of rental we do and how it looks after for you. Especially, we'd like to thank our sponsor for today is Delta Title. So the owner of that company is Douglas Beatty. He's the attorney as well. He's been in the attorney and title company services business for over 30 years. He's worked personally with Jim Reedy, I would say almost on half his deals, if not more. They are a great team and super helpful. We recommend them as one of our preferred title companies. They give us a group discounted rate to our clients and pass those savings on to everyone. They provide excellent, fantastic customer service. So we're so grateful for them for supporting today, helping us make this happen and getting this out there to the world.
Amen. Well said. So moving forward, before we start, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel. All that does is we'll give you a notification every time we post new content and a new video. And that's one way to win this free Yeti here. Now, the next way is to be active and engage and post some really great questions or comments or just feedback in the comment section all day today. And then finally, make sure to join our buyers list at memphisinvestmentproperties.net. Smash the join our buyers list button, and all we'll do is we'll send you our inventory every single week. So we appreciate you all very much. Thank you so much to our sponsor for the day of Delta Title. Hopefully one of you lucky people can win this Yeti. And hey, let's get off to the first session.
Let's join in. All right. Hey guys, Sean Taggy here, partner and chief operating officer of Memphis Investment Properties. Super excited to be talking to all of you today. Thanks for joining in and listening and just really supporting our company by watching these videos and of course purchasing properties from us and everything else. We really appreciate all the comments and everything that's been going on so far during our SOFA Summit. So let me dive into my presentation here and let me go here. Okay. So what I'm going to be talking about is some market data and then also talking about leadership and communication. So a lot of people ask, so I just figured I'd answer everyone here in kind of, what are the thoughts? Where's the market at? I know a lot of other people are looking at this. but I've just compiled some other data from lots of other different websites and everything like that, just kind of show where we're at. So here are mortgage rates. So comparatively to, since the 1970s, we're still not very high, right? We're still relatively low. It is rising a bit, and sharply, but we're still pretty low interest rates. Okay, so that's just something to factor in and just look at your cash flow. But yeah, that's where we're at on that. This one I really like. This is by Redfin, and it shows the number of active homes for sale. So during, I'd say 2019 was kind of when it was normal, 17, 18, 19. And as you can see, we had about over 1.5 million houses active for sale on a national level. And then COVID happened and we dropped down to 500,000 about. So now we're still under 1 million. So I think, supply and demand, right? When supply is less than demand, right? Market's still going to go up. So, I mean, there's still a very low supply historically, not a lot still being built compared to the demand that's out there. So something to watch on, and you can go and look at this monthly and watch and make your own speculations and assessments from the data. This is new construction, yet again from the Census Bureau. So we're still pulling permits, right? There's still houses being built, but I still don't think comparatively enough to what the demand is wanting, the growth of this nation and everything like that. This one I like to just show that, yes, the reason why the 2007 market crash happened is because there were really bad credit scores and people didn't qualify. Since then, they've really changed the qualifications for people to get a loan. And so this shows that a lot of better credit scores for people. So as you can see, most of the credit scores are in the 760 plus, all the way since really 19, it started picking up a bunch. So people have good credit scores when they're getting these loans. This one I like a lot, showing the demand. We have one of the largest generations coming into play right here, which is the millennial generation. So the blue, males and females, as you can see, it's bigger than the baby boomers, right? It goes out to here, where the baby boomers is here. So there's lots of people, 25, 30, which is about when you're going to get a house. So a lot of people wanting to enter the market to buy a new house. They're first-time homeowners. So like I'm saying, there's a huge demand, very low supply, very little inventory on the market right now comparatively. So that's where I think the market is. Am I saying it won't go down? Maybe not. I'm thinking it more kind of flatten out, maybe go down a little bit or a little bit up. I wouldn't think drastically up or down either way on market appreciation, is my personal opinion. So there's my thoughts on the market data. Hopefully that gives you an idea of where things are at, and these graphs, you can make your own assumptions and generalizations from there. Now I'd like to go on to my second part of my talk, which I always like to talk about, kind of just, something for you to take home and use and apply in your active life. So a new era of leadership. And what I think is kind of happening, a new wave from what I've seen in books and thought leaders and business consultants and other entrepreneurs, is that what I see the most powerful and the best leaders are doing, the most influential, is actually they focus less on the power that they have and more on empowerment of other people. I think this is test and tried throughout all of history, but it's just like a new era that's occurring. It's showing that people use persuasion over like the forcefulness of the power that they have and the authority. So it's about curiously finding the best solution, not just what you think is best. And asking questions and seeking first to understand and then to be understood. That one's from Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And to lead by influence rather than by the authority that you hold. And it's more focused on less micromanagement and more facilitation. So you're supposed to lead, manage, and hold people accountable. This is a debate that I love. I've talked with a few people, and it's kind of showing the difference between influence and authority. So can you have authority and influence? I kind of like to, point out, like the president of the United States, whoever that may be, he definitely has authority, right? The president has a lot of authority. A religious leader, a school principal, a teacher, a boss, a manager, a business owner, right? A man, anything like that. They have authority, and they can have influence, but authority doesn't necessarily guarantee influence. And also influence doesn't necessarily mean have a prerequisite that you need authority. So the next question, can you have influence without authority or an authoritative title? And the answer to that is definitely. You definitely can have influence without authority. I would dare say that some people can have less authority than others and have way more influence than them. And you kind of see that in organizations or other groups that are coming up. People can challenge the status quo of an authoritative figure and have more influence than that authoritative figure has. Okay, even though Gandhi and Martin Luther King had authority, they were church leaders or in the government, but before they had influence really before that. So I think authority can really magnify the influence you already have, but I think the best thing to focus on is your influence. So the last question here, can you have authority without influence? And you absolutely can. Like, you can kind of rank any president and they all have the same authority, but they all have different varying degrees of influence, right? Some presidents influenced the country way more than others did, and others didn't really leave a mark or a dent too much on the country. So what this is showing is that I don't think you need to really seek out the authority. Like, really, you should just seek out the influence that you can have on other people. And so I'll be going over how to have that better. So how can we increase our influence as leaders and as individuals, mainly as an individual? All right, so I'm going to go through an example here of someone. They had authority, but they mainly led by influence. So Turret Cathy, he was the owner of Chick-fil-A, an amazing guy. I actually have his book here, Covert Cows. It's not his, it was written by his chief marketing officer, but it talks a lot about him, how Chick-fil-A got started. And so I'm going to put my camera down here. So in the book, he said that he relied a lot on personal power over position power. So let me go on a story here. So this story is from this Covert Cows, page 16. And it is from Jimmy. So Jimmy Collins, Chick-fil-A's first chief operating officer, said this about Turret, and it's a story. On our grand opening day of Paramus Mall, as usual, Turret was at the lease line offering samples of Chick-fil-A to shoppers. As he returned to the kitchen to get a fresh plate of samples, he said to me, "That girl is not smiling." He pointed to Martha. And the person he's talking to is Jimmy Collins. So it looks like she's having a bad day. She's not smiling. So Jimmy Collins went to Martha and told her she was to smile at customers, right? Being a manager, right? Using his position power, you need to be smiling, right? Like telling that to employee. And then he walked away. That's all he said to her. So when Turret returned for another plate of samples, he said, "She's still not smiling." And I said, "I will see that she does it this time." Okay. But instead, Turret stopped me and said, "I'll take care of it." I was puzzled. What did he intend to do that he thought would do better than the instructions I was giving her? I watched. Turret walked up to Martha and said, "Why is it that every time I look at you, you're smiling?" She did give him a little smile, but it did not last. I thought that was not going to work, but I kept my eye out on her and Turret. The next time he passed her, as he went into the kitchen, he said, "There you are, smiling again." She gave him a bigger smile that lasted a little longer. But this time I was giving my full attention to watching the two of them. Turret would often turn from sampling to smile at Martha. Every time he did, she would smile. Soon Martha was wearing a big, beautiful smile that lasted the rest of the day. That day, I learned a great lesson of how the use of personal power is so much more effective than position power. I learned from a master, Turret Cathy. Turret never told her what to do. He clearly and simple made it attractive for her to do what he expected. As I thought about it, I realized that was how Turret led all of us. So I really like that. It's like he's not telling her, he's making her happy, right? He's influencing her to be happier. And so Turret was like the main owner of the whole company. He had a board, executive board, and a board of directors. But over the years, what his leadership team told him, and the chief marketing officer wrote this book, he said Turret would actually rarely use like his authority, like, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do. I'm the major owner. I say what we do. This is how it goes." He only used that less than a handful of times over all these years of when he's been running the business. He says here on page 143, Turret was suggesting that instead that we finance growth and simultaneously limiting debt using only our cash flow. And he made it clear that this would be one of those few times, I can count all of them on one hand, that he would use his majority vote as one as owner of the company. There was no need for a show of hands. So most of the time when he made decisions, he would listen to everyone's opinion and it would be a consensus vote, and he'd lead by persuasion. He would just try to stay his point, but he would listen, and so people would listen to him back. And they kind of led a peer group accountability team, and so that's really how you can go about influencing. I really like that example from this book. So now the real key to all this is learning how to have good conversations. Okay, so this is from Craig Weber, conversationalcapacity.com, if you want to look him up in Google. But this is what I've learned from him on this aspect. So I'm going to ask a few questions here. Have you ever been to a meeting or had a conversation with your spouse or a friend, but mainly work-wise or anything like that, and you guys were talking and it was great? You were both feeling listened to. There was a good vibe going around. You felt respected. Everyone was sharing their opinion and things were going well. Well, that's called the sweet spot. Okay, this isn't the Japanese flag. This is called the sweet spot. So the sweet spot is where everyone's listening, everyone's engaged in the meeting, in the conversation, and it's going well. Okay, now, how about this? Have you ever been in a meeting where people are arguing, right? So you might go away from the sweet spot to the right over here, and that side is people usually go away from the sweet spot in one of two ways. They either try to get comfortable or they try to be right. So on the right side, and this mainly shows up in leaders, sometimes or sometimes not, but these people are running to win. They don't care what other people's opinions are. They're just like, I need my opinion to be right. They're going to argue. They're going to get defensive. They're going to be like dictators, like my way or the highway. I'm the one who gets paid the big bucks. You have to do what I say, right? They're going to micromanage. They might attack. And really, it's deep down with their ego, right? They're scared to be wrong. And even sometimes they even will be wrong, but they'll still defend it and won't be willing to just be like, well, maybe there's another idea. Maybe just my idea is one, but maybe there's a better piece to it. Okay, which those questions were getting you back into the sweet spot. Okay, so that takes you away. So that's kind of the win side of it. Another part that takes you away from the sweet spot of a good conversation is the other way. So the people that freeze up. So they want to minimize the situation, like, oh, it's not that bad, like, this happened. They want to avoid. So maybe someone's on the right, all arguing, pounds his fist on the table, and the other person will just freeze. They're not going to talk anymore. They're not going to state their opinion. They're called the yes men. They're just like, yep, I agree with that opinion, Mr. Boss, Mr. Leader, right? They shut down. And it can even get so bad where they're just apathetic. Well, whatever I say during this meeting is not going to matter. My opinion just gets breezed over, and we're just going to do what this dictator on the right says, right? And can lead to apathy and resentment. So, and who's been in that type of meeting, right? That type of thing that's been happening, or seen that with groups on social media or anything, right? That leads to the wrong way, away from the sweet spot of where we can find learning and have great knowledge. So the whole point of the sweet spot is this is where we get smarter, right? We're smarter when we hear mixed opinions and voices and thoughts, and everyone's sharing it, regardless of what other people will think, right? They're being brave and sharing that. So in order to get to the sweet spot, we need to foster a safe place to talk. And in order to do that, whether you're the type of person that tries to win or you're the type of person that freezes up, to get into the sweet spot from either side, you either need to have curiosity, so as a leader or someone who wants to fight, or you need to be candor. You need to speak your truth and be brave. So what does that look like? Okay, so if you're the type of A-type, dominant personality, person always trying to win, or you see yourself that way, and also people can be on either side. You can switch back and forth, but generally people tend to be one way or the other, either freeze or try to win. Okay, so if you're the person that definitely tends to try to overwhelm and get argumentative, here's what you can do. You can be curious. So curiosity is a strong, genuine desire to know or learn something, meaning to know and learn something from someone else in that meeting, or learn that
what the best solution is. So what you need to do is, like, when you state your opinions, don't just be like, hey, we need to do this. This is how it's going to be. State, hey, I'm considering, make it like a hypothesis. I'm considering if we did this, it might lead to a better solution. Or I'm really curious about this. I'm wondering, what else am I missing here? I think if we do this, it'll happen. But can you tell me so-and-so what's going on? What am I not seeing here? What do you think? And then also, of course, when someone does give input, to encourage other people in your meetings to say stuff, always tell them, thank you for your input. Good point. Thanks for letting me know that. I didn't consider that before. You start doing that, people are going to start speaking up. Instead of you just being the one yelling and talking and saying how things need to go, you actually start to hear different opinions. And also, you need to ask people, what do you think? Hey, so and so in this meeting, what do you think? You haven't said anything in a while. I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts about this? So you need to, solicit others to want to talk. And then listen without judgment. Even if you blatantly believe it's not right or something, just let it be. It's just another opinion. It doesn't mean you were wrong. Even if it's different than what you said, it doesn't mean it's an attack on you. It's just something there. You need to understand before you can be understood. Okay. And that'll lead to other people wanting to ask you and learn. Okay, now if you're on the scared side, right, kind of the person that's fearful of speaking up what they're going to say, you're kind of scared of your boss, you're scared of what other people think of your opinion, then you need to have more candor. So candor is the quality of being open and honest in expression with frankness. It also is about being vulnerable, and that's the ability to sit in the discomfort of the possibility of rejection, right? Like, and that's okay. It's okay if you bring up an idea and it doesn't work. It's not what everyone thinks. That's okay. At least it gives up a point, and at least you've spoken what you want. Because if you don't ever speak what you think is right, at least saying it, that creates resentment and apathy, and then you get disengaged, and it makes you really sad and not like that. So candor, have more candor in a meeting, and you're that person that freezes up and is just quiet the whole time. State your position. Wow, like actually say, and say it clearly. So they call it in the military bluff. So the bottom line up front. So state, hey, regarding this matter XYZ, I think we should do A, B, C, D, and E. I think we should do this. I think it is a good idea. I think it is a bad idea, right? So state that. And don't just stop there. Don't just say, oh, I think that might not work out. Then when you say you're that, show your work. You're thinking why you don't think that'll work. You think why it will. So typically just give 3 bullet points, right? My hypothesis or my bottom line up front is this. And the reason why is I don't think that'll work because we've tried this in the past and this and that happened. I think this way would be a little bit better if we did it that way. And here's the data that shows that. In this report, it shows that we lost money trying that out or whatever. So that's how you can have more candor, is your bottom line up front and 3 bullet points. Okay. So hopefully this shows you of conversational capacity. We're trying to get in the middle. We're trying to, this helps each side balance out and get open and honest and actually talking, instead of it just a unbalanced, bloodbath or battle of a conversation. And so this guy that has talked about this, he teaches this to senators, Republicans and Democrats at the same time. And this teaches them how to get on a stage and how to really discuss hard matters when the stakes are high, right? When it really matters. This is when you need to have that sweet spot, get in the middle and start talking about good things and actually get somewhere. Because instead, either way it goes, you're not getting anywhere with the conversation. So I'd like to share an example of someone who is like this a lot. So another book that I've read and really like, another role model, of course, with Turret, and now is Bill Marriott. So Marriott Hotels, I love both those organizations, Chick-fil-A and Marriott. We all know they're great and amazing. And so it's just showing this era of leadership. They definitely both had this. So National Geographic Society, Gilbert M. Grosvenor, said about Bill, he was on the board, that unlike so many CEOs, Bill just doesn't have a big ego. So he's got an unusual style based on management by persuasion, not power. Sound familiar? In 1945, Dwight D. Eisenhower asked Bill, "What do you think?" He was just a young boy, and Eisenhower like asked him for his opinion. He felt so empowered. Bill felt empowered from that statement, and he used this all the time in his leadership meetings. He would see someone not speaking up, but they have an idea, or maybe someone kind of shakes their head or nods and go, "Hey, what do you think? Tell me your words. You know what you're thinking about this." And it just encouraged those meetings to be smarter. Instead of him just talking and leading, he would wait and listen to what other people had to say first, because he's not the boots on the ground. He can't be everywhere and anywhere at once and know everything. Bill stated, "I became a great believer in that phrase. I've used it ever since. What do you think? It works wonders." This more active version of listening is particularly important for high-level leaders who, by their lofty positions, often intimidate junior staff, right? The people are just yes men to the boss. This helps bring them out. He also had another phrase that he loved saying is just no big shots, meaning like just be humble. You're no better than anyone else. So I really like that a lot. This is also here's the link to it, and this is all over the place. Is just to high performing teams. Okay. So it's kind of an XY graph here on the bottom here. Motivation and accountability, right? We want our people, our employees, our kids, our communities, our spouses. We want people to be highly motivated and accountable, right? We want things to get done. We want them to, do what they need to do. But then also, like, in order to have that, though, we don't want them to be burnt out, right? So we want them also to feel safe, right? Have a good mental aspect of it. So we want that to be high. So let's kind of go through each one of these quadrants. So if we have, just a little bit of accountability and motivation, but it's a really safe place. People are just in their comfort zone. So we're not really achieving really high, great things, but it is rolling along. Like, people are feeling okay. They like where they work, but we're not really challenging people. We're not challenging the status quo. Okay. On the other side, we can have high motivation and accountability. So people are working, right? But it's not really safe. It's not safe to state your opinion. It's not safe to, even question anything, or like maybe try something different or new. So people are just going to be anxious. They're gonna shrivel up, right? They'll probably go to the side of the be quiet and not be candor, and they're gonna just be anxious the whole time. If there's low motivation and low psychological safety, people are just not going to care. They're like, well, doesn't matter. No one follows up with me. Enemies. They don't care if I do my job. And also, they don't listen to me anyways about it. So apathy, and that's the worst, where you'd want someone to be. The learning zone, the highest place, is where we're being challenged, right? So we're not backing out on like, hey, you missed this, right? This didn't happen. Why did that happen, right? But it's asking, why did that happen and how can I help you, right? So it's a safe place. Like, you're not going to be chastised if you messed up, kind of like here. It's not, we expect a lot, and then you're going to get, whipped if you don't achieve what we expect you to, or get fired. Like, this is like a safe zone, but also we're accountable. We're wanting people to work, and they have high expectations. And this is where you have the highest learning zone. So you can mess up. It's okay to mess up. You're not going to get criticized or anything for that, but you will be asked, you will be accountable for what you have. So that shows that as well. So all of these thoughts stem from several books and individuals of all similar content. Feel free to reach out and ask me, but here's some of the books. Any book written by Brene Brown on vulnerability. Crucial Conversations is another book. 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, great book on all this. And The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So I really like Brene Brown. In her world-renowned TEDx talk, I definitely suggest you go watch that. This stems on this a bit as well. Is vulnerability is the core of shame and fear and our struggle for worthiness. But it appears that it's also the birthplace of joy, creativity, of belonging, and love. So wouldn't it be great if all of us felt right in that learning zone, that the belonging, the love, like when we're really achieving something great, we feel like we're belonging somewhere. We're moving the bar here in our company, or in our communities, or in the world, or whatever it may be, or in our family. It comes there, but you really can't have that if you're not vulnerable and true and open with what you're doing. So it's kind of like a catch-22. You're scared of being vulnerable because of shame and fear is what caused that. But when you let go of that and you unhide it and you show your truth and your true cards, and you're being candor in what you're talking about, it creates all that joy. It creates great things from it. So I really like that a lot. So in summary, try to get to the sweet spot in your conversations. have candor or curiosity, figure out where you're at if you go to the right or the left here, and then figure out the ways to get back inside. So thanks so much, guys, for listening and your support of us for this third annual SOFA Summit. Sean Taggy, Chief Operating Officer and partner of Memphis Investment Properties. Reach out to us if you need anything. And thanks so much for watching. We appreciate everything. Have a good one.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next session for the SOFA Summit. Next up, we have one of our incredible current investors and owners. His name is Jerry Wimberly. He's out of Nashville, Tennessee. Jerry, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm feeling better. You might hear a little frog in my voice, but believe me, I'm feeling much better. And I'm looking forward to this interview. I mean, you guys have been so good to me. You know, it's my turn to be good back to you.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, it's been an incredible relationship. Love being able to have you so close, here in Nashville. So we can go look at your properties you have in Nashville and then have you come down and visit us multiple times in Memphis. We love that. So why don't you just start off? You've gotten a really incredible story, of what you've been through. So why don't you just tell everyone just a little bit about, your story and kind of what you went through in, 2008 and beyond.
Okay, I'll start from the very get-go. I'm a second generation real estate investor, second generation. And I learned it. I'm a, what do you call it, a hard knock. I started out as a hard knock real estate investor like my dad. We were hard knocks. You know what I'm saying? Knock us upside the head. We didn't know what we were doing. But real estate is so forgiving. It's not time in the market, it's time in the market, So I would say for the first 20 years, I mean, it's been 38 years now, 38 years. And the first 25, 22 to 25, I was a hard knock real estate guy. Only thing I did know and what I did right was to keep buying property. I did that. I just did that, I wish I had somebody like me in my ear back then. I'll probably be 10 times bigger than what I am now, at least, But eventually, somebody said, Jerry, you ought to go to a real estate, you ought to join your real estate RIA group, and you probably learn a whole lot more. And I did. And that's when the transformation began. It was 2010. I joined my real estate investors group. And I started getting educated. It took me probably a good 2 years to get educated. And when I meet guys like you, Mark, and the whole team over there, Reedy, I'm like, man, you are young guys and you know all this stuff. I mean, and I didn't learn till, 22, 25 years into the game, but I picked it up. And since I did a lot of things that were so good up front as a hard knock, it was easy to make an adjustment and just really explode to the next level. And that's pretty much what I've done, and I'm still growing the business. I've discovered that in order to stay ahead of the tax man, I have to continue to grow the business. We call that rolling in the dough. That's the only way you could do it.
Definitely.
To my knowledge.
Definitely. Yeah. It's, what you've been through with the classic, 2008 getting hit by in the stock market and then realizing that, well, hey, now's a perfect time to, shift and go all in to real estate. And tell us a little bit more about the current portfolio, that you have, especially in Nashville.
Okay. Hey, let me back up. I'm going to touch on what you just said there. Yeah, that brilliant part. I think I mentioned that to you before. About 2008, I lost about $1 million in real money, equity, and cash. You know, I retired from General Motors, and that was my life savings. I lost that in November 2008. You know, and I mean, I cried like a baby, and I said, I got to do something. I got to do something. You know, I prayed, cried like a baby, and prayed hard. I prayed really hard, and I went and took a class in option trading in December, and I studied it. After I took the class, I kind of studied it and worked it from January through April before I went into it. Now, thank God I had rental properties that would still generate me income. I had a 401k, some money was still left in it, and I had equity in my home. I pulled it all out, everything. And I mean, you talking about going for the home run hit. I was there to gather $300,000, and I put it in options, all options, in April of 2009. By those 6-month options, by September of 2009, I had $1.3 million. That was the game changer for me. I learned then that the stock market, I won't say it's rigged, but it's a win or lose. You know, I learned that lesson. And after I hit that for that money, it all went into real estate in 2009. From that point on, all real estate. And if you can imagine what was going on in 2009, the real estate market was at its low. I bought I leveraged $1 million worth of property in 2009, between 2009, the fall of 2009 and the spring of 2010. I leveraged $1 million worth of property. I mean, I put the $1 million in. So how much property can you buy leverage with $1 million? About 5 million. About 5 million.
Yep.
And remember this, that 5 million in property that I leveraged was at a 50% discount.
Yep.
When it came back like a rocket. It took me from that one little $1 million, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. It shot me beyond belief. With those monies, I was able to buy out to this day. Excuse me. To this day, I've been able to buy half of a 206 condominium complex. I was buying things for at the time units that was originally back then selling for 40,000. I was able to buy them for 10,000. Oh man, I bought everything I could get. Them same units now are selling 100,000 and up. Man, life changing. It's really pricey to purchase properties in Nashville. Now you could do it. It's a little harder, but you could do it.
So what are you doing? So now that you bought them at such a low price, you've ridden that appreciation wave. So now what are you doing with all of that, that property and that equity in Nashville?
I'm cashing it out right now, refinancing it. I'm about to pull about $4 million out, in equity to purchase more properties in Memphis with the Reedy Group.
That's great. I love it.
Beautiful thing, So what I've noticed is, in like about every 7 years, that real estate just doubles. It seemed like it. I don't know, but I tell you, I don't watch it that close. I'm so busy buying that you got to stop and check it. You got to stop and check that equity, and don't let it sit. You got to get it out of there. and buy you more real estate. Don't get caught up in buying stocks. I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Yeah,
Real estate, the way to go.
definitely. We appreciate the relationship, and it's been an incredible run. So, how has your experience been, with MIP and Reedy?
Excellent. Excellent. MIP Reedy is a professional, totally professional outfit. I watched you guys for a year. And I found out about you through the magazine Realty
Think Realty.
magazine. Think Realty, yeah. And I watched you guys for a year. I mean, I stalked you guys for a year, and then I still say I got to come down there and look at everything. And the team there at the time, they gave me a full walkthrough. I didn't go there to buy anything, but I bought some things. I said, this is just beautiful. And what I witnessed was an organization doing everything that I was doing, but on a higher scale. So I charmed right in with what was going on there. It's like, wow, it's like me investing in my own business right here. So I'm a believer. I'm a wholeheartedly believer in what you guys are doing, And I'm in another place too. At first, it used to be all cash flow. Don't get me wrong, I still love cash flow, but it's more to real estate than cash flow. There's a lot more to real estate than cash flow. Now, starting out, cash flow may be an important thing for somebody just starting out, but when you get to certain levels, it's more than cash flow. It's cash management, tax management. There's a lot of other things to it, So I believe I have somewhere my personal portfolio of, I don't know, about maybe 180 units, that I have management teams that manage about 180 units. And then I've already invested in several syndications with, you guys. And I'm looking for that to come to full fruition. And I'm willing to go even further. I'm all in. I'm all in with the Reedy Group. Okay. Memphis Investment Properties. I'm all in.
We love that. And we appreciate the relationship very much. So if you're you are a lifelong second generation investor, right? You have obviously, you've won sometimes, you've lost sometimes, but then at the end of the day, you have an absolutely incredible portfolio, of 180 units. And so let's just say, what advice do you have for that brand new investor, that person that has 0 properties and is basically interested in, building a portfolio?
Don't wait. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something, this is huge. I was just talking to my nieces and nephews and several of my cousins this past 2 weeks. I've been on a road trip, and I stirred up a lot of business for you guys. You're going to start getting some calls. I told them, talk to Mark, tell them who sent you. It's about to start happening. They starting to believe now. They seeing what's happening with me and my lifestyle. And one of the things I did as a hard knock, I was tactile. I wanted to do everything myself. That's not the best way. Knowing what I know now, I would say, be a turnkey investor. Don't get your hands dirty. Just go ahead, get with an outfit, like Memphis Investment Properties, to where you let them do the heavy lifting. They got all the structure in place, and build your portfolio there, 1 unit at a time, every year. And, really by the second or third year, you might could buy 2, and by the 6th or 7th year, you might could buy 3 a year. And then don't stop. But let a professional, strong team do all the heavy lifting, and you go ahead and live your life, whatever job you have, live your life. And by the time you get 10 to 15 units, you could probably decide to retire if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but live your life, let the pros do the heavy lifting. You will be 100% smarter than what I've ever been. And you'll be 1,000% happier, and you'll be free. So that is what I give, advice I give to a younger person. And that's the same advice I just given to my nieces and nephews and cousins, saying don't mess with it. If I had to do it all over and I knew about Memphis investment properties, that's what I would have done.
Hey, well, that's some great advice. Yeah, I mean, it's all about leveraging a team and leveraging your time and what's your ROI on your time. I mean, yes, you could do the property management on all of your houses, and every time there's a tenant or maintenance call, you could be the one to answer it. But having 180 units, your phone would be ringing all the time. It'd be absolutely chaotic. It makes a lot more sense for you to just level up and be that, what I always say, be that asset manager where you're the one making the decisions on how to grow the portfolio, how to add more properties to the portfolio, how to get rid of some properties, how to do refinances, and spend your time on the higher level problems, and then basically, farm out and hire out the things that aren't going to get you the highest ROI, on your time, and that is property management at the end of the day. So
exactly, because property management, that's repeatable. Once you get a strong team in place, they do what they do best. I feel more like I am into finance. I feel like I'm more of a finance manager now. I spend most of my time working with lenders and banks, pulling money out of the real estate to deploy it into more real estate. It doesn't end. The numbers just get bigger. And like I said, my greatest mistake was I was tactile. I transitioned through probably several levels, from working class to middle class to, somebody say rich, but it's amazing. But when you I put the work in. When you put the work in, like I put the work in, not to everybody, you can't but be rich if you put the work in. You have to put it in, plenty of hours. And I did it the hard way. Don't do it the hard way. Let Reedy do all that stuff. He got a cookie cutter. He has a cookie. Yeah, Memphis investment property. That's a cookie cutter process right there. Hey, it ain't even hard for you guys. You got the right team in place.
That's it. Well, it's all about building a system and a process that can be replicatable and duplicatable and scalable. It's not about buying one house and saying, I'm a successful real estate investor. That's more of a liability at the end of the day to only have one property. You need it to be on a spreadsheet where you have a portfolio, because if you have, one vacancy or one high maintenance, well, you have the rest of the portfolio to more than cover everything, and it's a self-sustaining, appreciating asset. And it gets a lot more fun when you can just put 180 units on a spreadsheet. That's pretty powerful, Jerry.
It looks good. It looks good.
I love it.
Well, totals, it looks good.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen. Well, hey, thank you so much. Really love and appreciate the relationship. It's great that we get to see each other all the time, being here in Tennessee and actually being a local. So you've built an incredible portfolio, and, we've learned a lot from you as well. So hope you have a great afternoon. And for everyone here on the Sofa Summit, that's it for this session. We got a great one coming up here right after, so stay tuned. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next session for the 2022 SOFA Summit. Really fired up for our upcoming speaker here. This is someone that we have been working with, wow, ever since before I even got started here with MIP and Reedy and Company, someone that we have had an incredible relationship for many, many, many years now. What is that, 7, 8 years? How long do you think
Got
that's
to be something like that. All I know is it feels like family when I go over to Memphis and come hang out with you guys.
Yeah, we love it. And so this upcoming speaker, his name's Aaron Chapman with Security National Mortgage Company. Aaron, welcome to the SOFA Summit.
Welcome. Well, I'm glad to be back, and I appreciate you guys letting me come back every year. And I say every time you've had the SOFA Summit, we've been here, and I've had the opportunity to speak in the office at the varied events you guys have had in other larger venues. Kind of sucks we had to go virtual for as long as we did, but it's kind of working out, right?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's nice to be able to reach more people doing the SOFA Summit, but obviously the in-person, face-to-face connection is key. So that's why we always love get as many people down to Memphis, come hang out. We love that. So what I love about Aaron Chapman as just a human being and as a lender is he's the guy to go to when you want someone to deliver. When you're buying a house, when you're buying a rental property, there's a lot of things that need to go correct, right? You need to make sure that you're buying a quality house that has a good home inspection. But when you want to actually get financing and take leverage, you want a lender that can actually deliver. And not all lenders are the same. And financing for a turnkey investor loan is very different than your primary owner occupant type loan. And we've had multiple situations where we got a call at what felt like the very last hour, and the individual investor said, I can't get this loan. I need to cancel the contract. And I say, do you still want the house? And they say, yes, I just need to figure out how to get financing. You give Aaron a call, boom, he'll pull some strings, and it's just like magic. He can get things done. So that's one of the reasons why he is our #1 top preferred lender on the list. He's the guy we recommend you go to, you reach out to get things done at the end of the day.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And the string pulling that's being referenced there is interesting. Is like there's not like they're phantom strings. It's just the lending industry itself. There's things that's available to people to do that many banks choose not to do. I'll just be honest. Even within our own organization of Security National, there's people that come to me a lot saying, how are you getting these done? Because we're having a hard time figuring out how to do these investor loans or these turnkey loans. And there's a lot of nuances to it that it's very difficult to understand. And the best way to get it is from the experience. And I've been doing this since 1997. I've been working with real estate investors buying turnkey since 2009. I've been working with investors strictly almost since 2003. Experience is what goes to that. And my team is large. I got 30 members of my team, and we're several hundred years of experience if you want to get and put all our time together. I've got people, I think the average person on my team has 15 to 20 years experience in the industry itself. But when it comes to working with real estate investors buying turnkeys, that right there is very different than anything else. And if you don't have a lot of time doing that, it can get you hurt. Now, there's a lot of lenders that will promise a lot of things, and God bless them for making the promises, but the promises that many of them make is the barrier to entry, right? You got to have a competitive rate. You got to have competitive costs. You got to be able to close the thing. That is a great pitch point, but it's also just the barrier to entry. To be able to handle turnkey investments, it's a different animal. And also working with a good team that understands how to deal with the real estate side of it is key. I've dealt with a lot of people where my experience can't help, right? I would deal with people in certain areas of the country that it really just boils down to what they want for the client over themselves, or for the investor over themselves. If it's all about them, it's not going to work for anybody. They're not going to win because they're selfish and nobody wants to work with them. The investor's definitely not going to win because a lot of corners were cut. There's no way I'm going to win because I can't convince people to take care of people. I can only do what I know how to do, which is work with good people and give the best I can of us. So this year, we've talked a lot over the last few years. Those who have watched previous SOFA summits, we've talked a lot about what's going on in the market, what's driving interest rates. That's usually the common thing. And of course, that's still the conversation today. We're in a situation right now this year over last year. Rates were phenomenal last year. Then we have inflation going through the roof, and it had a major effect on how investors think. It's easy to think like an investor when the money's just laying on the ground for you to pick up. It's a whole different animal to think of as an investor when you have to actually think of it and you have to put your mind to what's going on. So what we have now is the cost of things, or less as far as the rate is concerned, and what's going on out there on the lending side is making people have to dig in and understand what is it that they are going to buy and why, right? The cash flow is not as prevalent every month. So before it was like, everybody was searching for what's house is going to give the greatest cash flow. And so they were caught up in trying to analyze that. Now they're trying to find something with cash flow. For me, what I tell them, quit looking at your P&L or your pro forma for the first year. Look out 3, 5, 7 years and see what is going to continue to perform and actually continue to perform higher. And that's going to depend on your ability to raise rents and the ability to buy a property that they'll stay reasonably rented for the entire time you own it. If you look at it from that perspective, you'll see how that is starts to pay off significantly. And the reason why, and I'll ask Mark to do a little bit of math for you, has a lot to do with one, the market you're dealing with, who you're dealing with in that market that's helping you maintain your business. That's your operations division. Can you keep the property reasonably rented, and what can you raise the rents by? Mark, what's the rents increases year over year right now in Memphis?
The rent increases year over year in Memphis. So, I mean, we have been currently raising rents 10% which is absolutely unheard of, raising rents 10% for the previous tenants that are trying to renew their lease. Now that is on the higher side. That is not consistent and long-term. Right now, what we're doing is we're raising rents from that 4 to 6% figure. And what's been wild about that is, I mean, this, the last time inflation has been this high, we've had rents have gone up 10% year over year for the decade of the 1975 to 1984, right? And that is one of the powerful, pieces, is that while yes, interest rates are higher, but hey, we have this inflation, and what goes up with inflation? Rents do. And that's just absolutely powerful. So how long will we be able to raise rents at that 6 to 10% figure? Well, that all depends on how much this inflation and how long it's going to be here, which I think is going to be here for a while.
And that's 100% my point, because rates went up, other things go up, right? So the rents that you're getting every single year will continue to go up. But what's really cool about that is the cost of your loan continues to stay flat. That doesn't go up. So let's look at a couple of things before we really get into the numbers here. I'm going to do a quick share screen if my system wants to play. Here we go. So we're going to look at this real quick. I'm looking at the CPI. Now, the red line represents the CPI as it is today. And the CPI is the consumer price index. That's what everybody's looking at for inflation. Now, when you look at the Dow and the NYSE and the NASDAQ, none of them equal the same, right? They're all different numbers when you look at the value of that index. Am I correct, Mark?
That's correct.
Okay. And the reason being because they stack different stocks in there to come up with what that index is. The same as the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is an index of specific items that the Federal Reserve tracks to come up with an actual value of inflation, depending upon what those are doing. Not all the things we spend money on, only specific things. And all those things, interestingly enough, can be manipulated with monetary policy. So you look at the blue line, that factors in a lot of those other things they used to factor in way back here in the 80s. And I'm showing you where my cursor is. Right there. Way back in the 80s, they just look at everything. Now they don't look at it as much because they want to make it look like everything's getting better. But when in reality, our cost of living continues to go up while they're showing it's going down because they're manipulating certain things. Now, it's important for us to look at this because as Mark alluded to earlier, our inflation is higher than it's been in the last 40 years. The last time it was remotely as high was in the 1980s. Well, let's see what the interest rate was in the 1980s. This is the rate for people buying homes to live in. We were at 19%, 18 to 19%. But it's come down from there, but you can still see double digits all the way up to 1990. We have all these double digit interest rates. Even though inflation, if you go back here, inflation in the 90s looked to be really low, but look at where the interest rates were at that time. They were actually pretty dang high. So if you take that into consideration, where we are right now with inflation, our rates should be a hell of a lot higher than they are today. So what I'm telling everybody is you need to at least wrap your brain around the fact that we're getting a gift at this point. Where interest rates are today, we're still well below the double digits, but our inflation is high enough that it should be we should be well in the double digits, approaching 20% on our interest rates, especially for investors. The other thing that we want to look at is the federal fund rate. The federal fund rate, right? Actually, this is not the updated version. I had an updated version here on a different one. It's actually 2.5 right now. As of a couple of months ago, it was 1.75. They raised the federal fund rate by 0.75%. This should be 2.5. But the federal fund rate back in the 80s, when our inflation was high as it was here, we were 20% in many cases. If you actually go back and look at the chart and see how Paul Volcker raised those rates, you'll see them ranging from anywhere from 16 to 20%. That's why you're seeing this thing not peaking quite at 20 because they were dropping it down quickly. You would see a 4% swing every time the Fed would meet. That's a pretty big dang deal to have that kind of a swing. It's kind of painful. So the reason we bring that up is so people would understand what we could be at and what we're really not at. So that right there is a big deal. So another thing I'm going to share with you.
Well, and before you move to the next point, I mean, that's very well said. Like you said, today's rates are a gift compared to where we have been in the past in a similar economic environment. And I think it's really interesting because I'll talk to the investors that we just met over the last year. They got in during COVID, interest rates were at historical lows. And now they look at interest rates, being higher, and they say, well, this is worse than it was last year. Why would I buy rental properties now? And then you have the conversation with the guys that have been investing for decades, and they're doing a $5 million refinance and own 180 properties, and they're buying as many properties as they can right now because they understand that it's not about the interest rate today, the cash flow today. It's about long-term generational wealth, financial freedom. I mean, the whole goal is, how do you think this portfolio is going to perform in 20 years, right? And if you don't get started now, well, then where else are you going to, put that money at the end of the day? And that's the fun.
Well, you can't keep it in your bank account because it's losing money at such a rapid pace. I mean, you have it sitting in a checking or even a savings account at not making 1%, but inflation's eroding it at over. Even we just went with the Fed's numbers, 8.5%. Right, so it's a losing proposition to hold on to cash. You've got to put it somewhere and let it grow. So we do know because of inflation, you get an appreciation in the property. You get increasing rents, and we'll get into those numbers here in a bit. But let me ask this question of you. Well, before we get into the question, I'm going to share one more thing with you guys. I'm going to share with you the history of actual rates. And so this has 2,695 lines showing the history of the interest rates. I'll get you deep in here and you can take a look at some of these interest rates here. Let me see here. I'm still in the 90s on this. Now we're getting into the 80s. Look at all these double-digit rates in the 80s. Interest rates of 13%, 14%, 15%. We're seeing 18 in plenty of these spots.
Yeah, I remember when Jim Reedy said they threw a party back in the 80s when interest rates went below 10. And imagine if you called someone and they're like, hey, interest rates are 10. Do you want to lock today? People would freak out. It's just so interesting.
Lose it. I'm surprised we're not there. Right. So the reason I share this with you is I want you to see what has happened with rates. So we were showing 18s. Now we're showing down to 7s, 8s.
Such a big file, it's laggy.
Yeah, I'm touching it too much, so it's popping up windows and stuff. So, and it's such a big file. There's 2,600 lines here, I think is what I said. Yep, 2,600 lines is what we're getting into. So 2,695 lines. Now, what I did is I averaged this out. So if you go back from 1971 to 2022, tracking the 30-year fixed mortgage for people buying houses to live in, the average interest rate right here is 7.769. So it's basically 7.7% was the average interest rate from 1971 to now for people buying houses to live in. Now, the average rate up until quantitative easing. Quantitative easing started in 2009 when we had the crash of 2008. The Federal Reserve took and put $1 trillion into the mortgage-backed securities markets from January 1 of 2009 to the end of March 2010. 1 year and 3 months, $1 trillion. We've talked about that at some of the MIP events in person. So that $1 trillion where that started, if you look at the average rates from 1971 to 2009, before the Fed got involved and started messing with things, 9.11% is what the average interest rate was up to that point. And that, again, was for owner-occupied mortgages. Then you get into 2009 when you had the quantitative easing starting from 2009 till now is an average rate of 4%. Now, when you take the pandemic, you take the virus, gets released from China, changes the world, right? The Federal Reserve goes and basically turbocharges their investment into the mortgage-backed securities, dropping in 1 trillion. Remember before we said $1 trillion from January 9th, 2010, January 2009 to the end of March 2010. 1 year and 3 months, $1 trillion. Actually, it's 1.25 trillion. Now that I remember, 1.25 trillion. Well, from March 20th of 2020 till March 30th, 2020, they dropped in $1 trillion in 10 days. Then they continue to drop in billions upon billions of dollars into the markets, giving us an average interest rate from that time, March of 2020 till now, of 3.3%. If you back out the Fed's quantitative easing and their involvement and start dumping printed capital into the markets to drive down interest rates, we would be an average of 9+%. Just the way it would be. We may be a little bit lower than that because things were a little lower before the Fed started getting involved, but we're still looking at probably 8 to 9%. That would be the average. So again, regardless of anything, just looking at history, today is a gift, an absolute gift when it comes to the interest rates. And if a person wants that chart, I'd be more than happy to provide it to you. It's locked. You can see it. That way, if you touch something, you don't know how to put it back, I locked the whole thing. You guys can see all these interest rates that we researched. So here's another thing that I want to get into real quick. Who benefits when interest rate is the most important thing, Mark?
Who benefits when interest rates are the most important? What do you mean by most important?
Well, when an investor is looking to buy a property and the most important thing to them is getting the best interest rate, who benefits by that thinking?
Who benefits by that thinking? That's probably the lender.
100% the lender. And some people might think, well, why would the lender benefit if they're shopping around to get the best interest rate? It doesn't make sense that the lender would benefit. Because if you can program them to think interest rates are what it's all about, then it's easy to convince them to refinance their home. So who, and Mark, have you, I'm asking everybody else to ask that question for themselves, but who's looked at an amortization table on a 30-year fixed loan?
I hope everyone here, and if you haven't, you should.
You should, especially the first 5 years, because it's mostly interest. And let me show you right here.
Yep, exactly.
Right here what I'm looking at. So we have a loan where a guy had $120,000 balance on his home. And it was a 30-year loan. He had paid on that for 4 years and then comes to us and say, hey, I want to refinance. So he wants to do this refinance. He started at $120,000. By 48 months later, he owed $113,537. So he only paid the principal down by $6,462. That's it. Well, the amount of payments, though, when he made over this period of time, $719.46. When you add that up over 48 months, it was $34,534 that he paid out over that period of time. So he paid out over almost $35,000, but his principal down just went down by a little over $6,000. Who won in that situation?
Well, now the lender, because that's why they send mailers every 5 years to get you to do the refi.
Exactly. The lender's killing it. Literally, they're just making interest. That's it. Well, we couldn't convince him to not do that. He decided he had to do it. So I'm going to show you the math real quick. This is the math I showed you. If you want to pause, take a look at it. Here's the actual calculations. So you can pause it and take a look at it. But this was the deal we did for him. I tried to talk him out of it. When it's extremely busy and people want to refi, I spend an enormous amount of time telling them, you're wasting money by doing this. Again, he started with a $120,000 loan. By the time we got the payoff on his loan, we had the prepaid items, which is taxes and insurance. We had the closing costs associated with the loan, lender, title, appraisal, inspections, all those kind of things. I guess no inspections, but lender, appraisal, and title.
Sure.
Took those and added them on the loan, which is what everybody does. Look at his new loan amount, $119,833. It was $166 and change, $166.04 away from his original loan amount.
It's a waste of 5 years of payments.
100% waste, because you just put it all back into this. And then if he got into the habit, which is the habit they're hoping for, is get people into the habit of continuing to refinance it every few years. 20 years from now, where's he at? He owes exactly where he started at 20 years before. But the guy down the street who's been making his payments, who had bought it at the exact same time with the same loan amount, the same interest rate, made his payments over that time period, he's almost done. He's a third of the way done. So what's also sexier about this is not so much just what is done as far as the him paying off the house. It's what did he actually pay. So let's take a look at this real quick here. actually, I'm going to get a different, actually, no, I'll just use this. It's a different numbers, but we're going to go with these numbers because this was an actual deal we were working on at the time I put this together. So here's an individual that has a loan, $147,300 purchase price, 20% down with $117,840 loan amount. Now, interest rates reached 7% this year. They're not there anymore, right? We're way off of that. We're in the low sixes now, but it peaked at 7%. Now, when you looked at this, the payments that this person was making was going to equal $283,237 over the entire life of the loan. He borrowed $117,000, but he's paying $282,000. Isn't that a little daunting? Some people are like, this is stupid. Why should I be doing this? But what's inflation doing to the dollar you're making payments to the lender? It's declining every time you make the payment, right? So when we recalculate all of this over that 30 years, and I'm just using an 8% inflation, because if you look back at those charts I was showing you before, we've been over 8% inflation for a long time. It's longer than 2012 when you look at the real rate of inflation. But the dollar is losing that much value every single month or every single year. And at 8% inflation, the dollar is losing at least 0.666% of its value every single month. So if you borrowed it today, bought an asset at today's dollar value and started paying it back slowly like this, and you recalculate every dollar that leaves your hands compared to the value the day you borrowed it, this guy's only paying back $106,845. That's it.
Everyone needs to take a screenshot of this photo right here, because that inflation adjusted payment is just one of the most powerful values and pillars of owning real estate, because as inflation goes up, as rents go up, your inflation adjusted payment goes down, and that spread is yours.
Yes, it belongs to you. Plus your value goes up on your house. Plus you're writing things off on your taxes that your tenant's the one paying it. Well, take a look at this. We just put this at a 3% increase in rents, right? He started at $1,185 a month rent. This is a real deal, right? He financed $117,000, got $1,185. He was at a just over a 1% rent to loan ratio. He was well below a 1% rent to value ratio, which is a lot of people are kind of freaking out about that. But it's just over the 1% rent to loan ratio. Well, if he's making a 3% increase every year on that base rent of $1,185, look what his total income was, $665,000 on this house. That's the income. That's not the appreciation. That's not the tax benefits. That's the income. But you're only paying out $282,000 of those actual dollars, but the value of those dollars you gave up was $106,000. What if you reinvested the $665 or whatever it was you were getting as far as the cash flow? Where is that going for you now? You can start seeing the possibilities, right?
Compounding on that, powerful. Yep.
100% compounding growth, right? Now,
so my question to you here is still saying, okay, hey, rates go down. Let's not do a refinance. When do you think it is recommended to do a refinance, if ever?
I love doing the refinance when I get cash back out and put it to work in the market.
There you go.
There's no reason, in my opinion,
cash out refinance, pull out enough capital to actually go double the size of your portfolio, right? You have one house,
or get another property, right? If you refinance one house and you get enough to buy another house, you just doubled your assets within that one, and it cost you nothing. Sure, you had to pay fees, but who's paying those back anyway? It's your tenant, right? And you just doubled your asset base as a result of it, based on that one refi for one purchase. It didn't cost you anything. That's not your money. That's the lender's money. They're the ones who are putting that up and they're the ones losing money because they gave it to you. You're the one making money because they gave it to you. The other cool thing here, you mentioned people take a screenshot of this. Yes, take a screenshot of it. We don't need to. And here's why. Because you just get your QR code out, all right, get your phone out, get your camera up, take a picture of this QR code. Take that. And the reason being, some people may not be thinking, well, why am I going to do that? I don't want to clutter up my phone with QR codes. Well, here's why. We'll go through this first and then we'll come back. So you're going to get this thing right here called the QJO investment tool. Why is it called that? Because I named it that. I named it the Quit Jerking Off investment tool. Because that's what people are doing when you're so worried about rates and what's my cash on cash return and all this kind of stuff. You're missing all the other things. And the reason I made this tool is to help people be able to see how inflation is affecting you. This is the tool you will get. Now, he's going to ask you for your name, your email address, your phone number. Give me the information. Don't put fake crap in there because I'm going to update this. I'm going to make it better and more hot rodded. I've already got the plans, some cool stuff. I'm not going to tell you what we're doing, but it's going to be some cool stuff that you're going to get those updates when we do that. So here, let's just use the calculator real quick. Go to the mortgage amortization schedule, please. And you're going to click on that. and it's going to open up that calculator. You're going to put in, just to check it, make sure it's working the same as what I have. You're going to type in 20% for down payment, 150,000 for a purchase price, and we're going to put in 7% interest rate because we shouldn't be scared of rate. And then you're going to calculate this thing. And then you're going to see the principal and the interest. You're going to scroll down to the bottom. You're going to see the total payments to date, and then the loan balance, that's the balance that went down after one payment. And then you're going to go up to the right, and you're going to click on this calendar icon. And you're going to see every year for 30 years. And you're going to scroll far to the right to 30 years from now, hit select and close, and you're going to see the total payments you'll make, the zero balance. And this is what inflation did to those payments. $98,050. You paid $259,000, but it's worth $98,000. Now, this is set at 8% inflation. The updated versions, you can be able to set the inflation yourself. There's going to be a lot more other cool things you can do. Another interesting thought here is the difference between the dollar now and the dollar and 30 years from now and what that looks like. Let me explain how that shows. You can buy $65 worth of stuff, as this is evidencing right now today, but in 30 years, it's going to cost you $719. That's what 8% inflation does to goods. So you can understand what we're up against here. So if you didn't get it, here's your chance at getting it again. Go ahead and just click on that, get your QR code. Download this. It's a tool for you. There's other tools on there. You can calculate your Schedule E income off of it. You can calculate your reserves that you need to buy more property. And if you get them, you're not sure how to use them, just reach out to me. Here's the ways to get a hold of me. Just go to aaronbchapman.com or aaronchapman.com or search for Aaron Chapman, look for the bald bearded redneck, and then make an appointment to talk. I'll walk you through it. The bottom line here is I absolutely need you to be successful in your real estate investment venture, because if you become a failure, I become a failure, and I'm very violent against failure.
Well said. Well said. Well, hey, I just got the Quick Jerking Off app, filled it out. Literally took, well, that took 5 seconds just to send it off. That's a great little product that you have there. But man, I mean, I love what you said about let's look at the past to figure out where we are and how lucky we are for the present. And just to be able to go and show and realize that the rates that we have today are a gift. But once again, if you're fixated on rates, you're already behind, right? You're already losing at the end of the day, because the focus is on how is this portfolio performing in 30 years, right? And that is the long-term vision, the long-term goal. To, like he said, you can do a cash out refinance to be able to buy more properties, but don't do it just to be able to adjust your rates, because then you're just paying interest the entire time.
100%. And don't get caught up in the cash on cash return, especially that first year, first couple, 2 or 3 years. In fact, one thing that it's failed to be looked at is what happens just on the amortization of the loan. Just another quick math equation. You guys get your calculators out and test my math here. But if you bought a house for $100,000 and you put 20% down, you would invest $20,000 of your money. You would get a loan for $80,000. And if you did your job as a real estate investor, as I said before, is pick the right people, get the property you can keep reasonably rented for the entire time you own it, you can raise rents on. We know the tenant pays off that $80,000. So take the $80,000 on your calculator and divide it by 30, because that's how many years it takes to pay that off. You will find that the sum that you end up with is $2,666.67. That means every year, averaged over 30 years, that tenant is paying it down by $2,666.67. That means your 20% or your $20,000 grows by $2,666.67 averaged over 30 years. Now, you get that figure, hit the divide button. So $2,666.67, hit divide. Now type in your investment, $20,000. Then hit the equal sign. You will figure out that is growing by 13.33% per year. Your money's growing by 13.33%. It doesn't do that anywhere else. And that's predictable, provided you do your job. Some people will right now be saying, whoa, wait a minute, I paid closing costs. Okay, let's add $6,000 to that number. Instead of taking the 26,666.67 and dividing it into 20, divide it into 26,000. You'll find that's a 10.2% increase in your initial investment year over year, before cash flow, before rent raises, before the inflation we just talked about, all of that. If you can find 10.2% religiously without all those other things, you're still kicking ass. I'm telling you, you're getting it, and all this gravy too. So don't forget those things. Don't forget that real estate makes it, well, residential real estate makes geniuses out of all of us eventually.
So I absolutely love the math that you just did there. If that doesn't make any sense, please reach out to us to let us, elaborate on that. And let me ask you this, that 10 to 13%, let's do 10% because it's more conservative. Is that factoring in the interest rate? Does it matter if you have a 10% interest rate or a 2% interest rate? Are you still getting a 10% return on your money year over year?
Your initial investment is growing by 10.2% regardless of what the rate is. Doesn't freaking matter.
Regardless of the rate. That's key. And I always like to say, what's the worst case scenario? What's the rock bottom? And that's exactly what it is right there. That is the number one powerful benefit of using leverage, investing in real estate, because that's worst case scenario. And if you look at all the charts, historically speaking, we can consistently say, confidently say, rents are going to go up with inflation, and same with values that go up. But even if they didn't, I'd take a 10% return. I mean, that's powerful. And that is the average of the S&P 500 after tax. So that's one of the big benefits of owning real estate, but also having leverage, but smart leverage with the right people, have the right team, find people that are actually experts that focus on turnkey investor loans, because they're different than the primary loans. That individual that got you the loan so you could buy your very first home to live in, it's not the same type of product. You need to have someone who's a special T at it. And that's exactly who you get with Aaron Chapman, Security National.
Right on, brother. Well, I appreciate you allowing me to take the time, and I appreciate you guys for paying attention, listening, and let me spout off and throw numbers at you. Slow it down if you need to. Reach out to me. I'd love to just share all the data with you. And thanks for getting the app. It's only going to help.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, for everyone out there on the SOFA Summit, hope you found a bunch of value. If you need Aaron's contact information, we will add that here so you can reach out to him. Please give him a call. He's on the phone all day, every day, talking about the pros, the cons, where we're at in the market. Highly recommend joining his YouTube channel. He posts 2 videos every single week that are extremely valuable. I watch them every single week. That'll educate you so you can have immediate access to data and facts and make informed decisions, because that's what it's all about here at the SOFA Summit, being educated so we can make smart, informed decisions. So that's it for this session. We'll see you here and right after for the next one. See you soon. Bye, Aaron.
Everybody.
Hey everyone, welcome to our next session for the SOFA Summit. I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. His name is Chris Picuro with Integrated Financial Group. Chris, how you doing today?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. We're excited to have you here again at the SOFA Summit. Chris is a CPA tax guru. He's actually my personal CPA, so I can definitely vouch for him. And one of the big benefits of owning real estate is you get a lot of tax benefits. But as we all know, it's very complicated. Every single person's situation is different. It depends on the asset. It depends on your income and where you are. And there's a lot of different, thoughts out there on what is the best strategy, what's the best path to reduce your taxable burden. And at the end of the day, the way I kind of explain it is, if you are going to want to buy and you own rental properties, you need to have a professional like Chris that focuses on clients that own rental portfolios. And that is exactly what Chris is able to do. He's built this company around real estate investors. And I remember the very first time I did the tax planning session with Chris, and I thought in my mind how much in taxes I was going to have to pay. And then when he told me that actual number, how much less it actually was, I remember calling my wife and just cheering for joy. So who knew it? Because that's the goal, right? At the end of the day, is how can we keep as much of our appreciation? How can we keep as much of our cash flow as humanly possible and pay the least to the government? So Chris, why don't you take it away?
All right, Mark, thank you so much. It's a truly an honor to be back on the sofa. It's sitting so comfy. It's kind of like a recliner now, but I'm excited to talk to you today and share with now the world what we've been doing in our practice. We've developed a proprietary tax planning and strategy system specifically designed for real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and I'm going to walk through some concepts today and talk through some ideas we have for real estate investors. So I'm going to share my screen here and we'll start the fun. So this concept and what our goal is in our brand is called Teaching Tax Flow. And what our goal is to legally and ethically reduce the taxes you pay in your lifetime. So what we're going to talk about today is controlling your tax burden. Tax flow is a term that we created. I actually created it when I was out for a run about 5 years ago. And it just means the tax benefit or burden of any of your financial decisions. So how do we control that tax burden? And this is the REI edition, because obviously we're at the back of the Sofa Summit. We wanted to put something special together for everyone attending. Just a little background. I've just been doing this a long time. I have a passion for real estate. Everyone on our team eats our own cooking. So I'm really excited about this educational platform because I do love teaching. I do love educating. I do love empowering people with knowledge and pouring that into people. So that's just a little bit about myself. And let's get to the agenda. We're going to talk through the definition of tax flow, and we're going to talk through our 3 laws. So tax planning and strategy, people can engage in tax planning and strategy. In most CPAs and tax professionals can provide tax planning and strategy service, but most of them don't have a process. Most of them don't have, and that, similar to in football, not that these are my favorite teams by any means, but Alabama, the New England Patriots, they had a process. They had a system for running the organization that created great results. So we have a proprietary process that we've created that I'm excited to share with you on how to do the tax planning, because people talk, oh, I got to plan, do some tax planning. Well, what does that mean? So let's talk through how it gets done. So I'm going to share these secrets that we've only shared with our client base, with everyone here today. We're going to talk about the 3 laws of tax planning. So these are like our commandments. We have a 4-step process. We're going to talk about what a marginal tax rate is, which is completely different than a tax bracket. Tax brackets, kind of like that rich dad, poor dad, tax brackets, poor dad, marginal tax rates, rich dad. And we're going to talk through part of that 4-step implementation process is diagnosing, then prescribing, diagnosing your tax situation, sitting at home. I'm going to teach you how to self-diagnose. And we use color-coded diagnoses in our teaching tax flow process because they're easy to understand. And then we're going to talk through our IQ test. So let's say you have a strategy. How do we make sure it makes sense to implement? Finally, I'm going to spend the most time on our top 3 strategies for real estate investors. And then I'll have a special something for anyone watching. So teaching tax flow. What is tax flow? I just mentioned the tax burden or benefit of a financial decision. It's really simple. Every financial decision you make has a tax burden or a benefit. It's up to you to determine what that is. And most people, especially start just getting into real estate investing, don't realize that the tax benefits of their investments. And we're going to talk through that. 3 laws of teaching tax flow. So it's very important to understand from a 30,000-foot view what teaching tax flow is all about, which is tax planning and strategy. The first one, cash flow does not equal tax flow. What that means is that we as real estate investors, we focus, and business owners, we focus so much on cash flow. What we should be worried about is tax flow. What is the after-tax cash that you receive, right? Because a property might cash flow a certain amount, especially on your pro formas, but how can you protect that and not give that up to number 2, your involuntary business partners? So taxing agencies are your involuntary business partners. That's a bummer. If you like it or not, the Internal Revenue Service and for your portfolio, potentially the state of Mississippi, because state of Tennessee, we don't have a personal income tax return unless you form an entity. Now you've just invited another business partner in, which is the state of Tennessee. And I'm sure people watching are invested all over the country. So any taxing authority or taxing agency is your involuntary business partner. That's the bad news. The good news for you is that you have the choice of how to arrange your finances. You get to write your own operating agreement, and you get to structure how much of your net income are you paying to that business partner. And sometimes, how much is your business partner paying you to reward you for action? So just like people that have children or teachers, certain things you do are encouraged, certain things are discouraged. So luckily, if you're watching this, you're involved in real estate or thinking about it, and real estate is one of the very highly encouraged industries in our country based on the tax code and how it's written. Final teaching tax flow law. Your tax return is a verb, not a noun. The word done, D-O-N-E, is a 4-letter word in the teaching tax flow ecosystem. Of course, it's a 4-letter word. We're math people, not English. But if you're in a situation where your tax return is getting, quote, done once a year, that is completely reactive. And in that case, your involuntary business partners, they're deciding the tax you pay, not yourself. You need to take control of your situation and figure out how to control the tax you pay legally and ethically. So our mission, legally and ethically, reduce the tax you pay in your lifetime. So those are the 3 laws. So we kind of talk about, okay, you might say now, this sounds good. Instead of me giving a pile of stuff or trying to sit in TurboTax and enter things or giving things to my accountant, I wanted to start doing some tax planning and strategy, especially being a real estate professional, or not real, I shouldn't say that, real estate investor. Well, in our system, there's a 4-step strategy implementation process. And guess what? People are very impatient, Mark. People want to implement a tax strategy without going through the proper steps that we're going to identify right here to make sure. I can't tell you how many times someone has done something because they heard it online or their friend did it without going through the process of figuring out if that's correct. So the first thing you should do is really analyze and project your current situation. Figure out what your marginal tax rate is. We're going to talk about that next. Once you figure out your marginal tax rate, then you could diagnose yourself. You diagnose yourself in our system based on color, red, green, purple, gold. We're going to talk about that as well. And then after you diagnose, then we prescribe different tax planning strategies. And those tax strategies come with benefits. Some are immediate and some are in the future. And once we diagnose someone, think about it, the doctor, we prescribe something, then we IQ test it. Now, IQ test is a proprietary process and system that we've developed. It stands for identify strategy, quantify result. And within the IQ test, we have to make sure that whatever strategy that we've prescribed and you feel like makes sense passes our 4 tests, which is positive tax flow, suitability, liquidity, and comfortability. So to give you an example, if someone is looking to reduce their tax but they don't have a lot of liquid assets to invest, that is going to be very difficult. So they might not have the liquidity to implement a strategy. The final thing is implement. So once you diagnose, prescribe, then we say, this makes financial sense. This has positive tax flow. This strategy you can afford, you're comfortable with. Then we go into the implementation phase. And some strategies in our system are self-implementing, like an HSA contribution is an example. Some of them you use a tax professional primarily, and then some of them use a third-party implementation partner. So some of our ultra advanced tax strategies would include like a 1031 exchange. You're going to have a qualified intermediary. You're going to have potentially mortgage professionals involved. You're going to have tax professionals involved and that sort of stuff. Let's talk a minute on marginal tax rate, because this is very, very important when we're trying to figure out one of the laws of teaching tax flow and in our system, figuring out your marginal tax rate. It is not your tax bracket. There's a big, big difference. Tax brackets playing checkers, marginal tax rates playing chess. What your marginal tax rate is the amount of tax you pay, so the amount you pay your involuntary business partner on each additional dollar of income that you recognize, or conversely, the amount of money you save by picking up an additional dollar of tax deduction. So you could be in a 22% tax bracket in a 30% marginal tax rate. Because the marginal tax rate, and I won't read these things to you, but the marginal tax rate factors in all these bullet points below. We have several different tax rates. We have the self-employment tax. We have the Medicare surtax. We have the net investment tax. We have alternative minimum tax. So these are all things, these taxes that kind of pile on. And also, when your income gets to a certain level, there are limitations on credits, like the educational credits, dependent care credits, maybe even deductions like student loan interest. But there are also some tax rates that are beneficial, like long-term capital gains and qualified dividend tax. So just be aware that your marginal tax rate is not your tax bracket. Okay, take a deep breath. We're doing well. You might have to pause this, go grab your tax return, try to figure this stuff out. But so once you know your marginal tax rate and you figure out what you think your marginal tax rate might be in the future. Now, if you have a crystal ball, I want you to email me or send Mark something, because I will like to go to Las Vegas and figure out who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. Of course, I want it to be my Tennessee Titans, but that's another story. But once you figure out in general, like if you're in a peak your earning year and you're a couple of years away from retirement, your marginal tax rate is probably going to be less in the next couple of years than now. But if you're a younger person and your income is growing, and I mean, Mark, what do you think in general tax rates in the future in this country are going to go up or down?
Definitely going to go up.
Right. So let's consider that. So if you think your marginal tax rate is going to be higher in the future, that'll affect what your diagnosis is. So it's diagnose, prescribe, IQ test. So diagnose. So anyone in general who has a 25% or higher marginal tax rate is typically what we call a red diagnosis, meaning they can benefit from an immediate tax deduction. Or if their marginal tax rate, if let's say they're in the 24% marginal tax bracket, but they think they're going to be in the 10% in the future, then they could benefit from red. So red means immediate tax deduction. Green in general means go. Green means that, hey, I'm in a lower marginal tax bracket right now. Maybe I should take advantage of some tax strategies to accelerate income into a given year. Purple's tax deferral, and then gold is tax-free income and growth. And almost everyone should be considering the gold diagnosis. Tax-free income and growth is so important in understanding the difference between tax deferred and tax-free. I'll give you a quick example of a green. Let's say you have a business and you bought a bunch of equipment, and you're going to have a low income that year because just because you bought equipment. It's in that year you might want to convert any IRAs to a Roth, because now you're accelerating income into that year. So first step, figure out your diagnosis. Red, green, purple, gold which is in our process. Diagnose, and we look at different prescriptions. I'm going to go through three most popular and best tax planning prescriptions or strategies for real estate investors next. But assume you get that prescription, then you go through that 4-part RQ test. So like I said, positive tax flow, suitability. So sometimes you have to be an accredited investor, which I know you guys work with to get into certain investments. There has to be suitability. You have to be comfortable with the strategy. There might be certain cities or certain investment types, certain industries that you're not comfortable, or maybe your spouse isn't comfortable. And by the way, you also have to have the liquidity to invest in it. So if it's a syndication deal, yeah, maybe there's some tax benefits now, maybe they're in the future, maybe it's suitable, maybe you like it, but you just don't have the liquidity. Maybe you sold something and paid off your house. Now you don't have liquid assets to implement that strategy. So this is our IQ test. Now let's talk through our top 3 strategies for real estate investors. Okay. So we understand you diagnose, you prescribe, you IQ test it, and then you implement. But what are the top 3 for real estate investors right now? Number 1, Section 1031 exchange. So with the Section 1031 exchange, it accomplishes a lot. It accomplishes red, purple, and gold tax strategy. You're getting an immediate tax deduction because you're not paying tax on the gain from the sale of your property. You're getting purple because you're deferring the tax into the future. And you're getting gold because if you continue to defer, you'll have tax-free income and your beneficiaries can inherit that property and get what's called a step up in cost basis. So the 1031 exchange is very popular right now, especially with the way the market has gone over the last couple of years. Obviously, there are some rules. This is a more advanced tax strategy where you're going to have to use a qualified intermediary. But I do want people to understand that the 1031 exchange is pretty lenient as far as real estate assets. You could sell a single family home and reinvest that potentially into a syndication. You could sell an apartment complex and buy a commercial property. So that is really nice with the 1031 exchange.
Definitely, definitely. And for those that are interested, the way the 1031 exchange works, that's if you already own a property and you've owned it for multiple years and that property has appreciated significantly. And instead of just selling it and paying those capital gains to the government, you can actually sell that individual asset. So let's say you have $1 million house in California and it appreciated $500,000. Well, now you can sell that house in California and go buy multiple little houses in Memphis, but drastically increase your cash flow while also deferring those capital gains down the road. And then essentially, let's say 10, 20 years down the road, you want to sell those little houses. Well, you can do another 1031 exchange and just keep basically kicking the can down the road until you pass away. And then it passes on to the heirs. And basically, like Chris said, those cap gains just go away because of the step up basis. Is that correct?
Exactly. And you get to reset your depreciation schedule. So with the 1031, make sure you're working, ask Mark and the team, make sure you're working with a qualified intermediary. There are some rules, but again, when we think about what does the government want us to do? It wants us to reinvest in assets in this country. So it provides the 1031 exchange. So you could, if you sold the property, the California property, you could either pay the state of California and the IRS, your involuntary business partners, 1% of the profit. But if you really don't need that cash and you want to continue to invest, then you can reinvest it tax-free.
Definitely.
The next thing, building a rental portfolio, gold strategy. Now, Mark and I were just talking about this before meeting here. And so many people focus on that red diagnosis, like I need immediate tax deductions right now. Building a rental portfolio is an amazing way to build tax-free income and growth. Especially if you're a high income earner, because if you have dividends or interest at the bank, you're gonna give up 30 to 40% of that money to your involuntary business partners because of the way the income is taxed. We're building a rental portfolio, you're paying tax. Again, back to the tax laws are written to encourage and discourage certain behavior. You're paying tax instead of on your gross income when you're a rental property owner, on your net income after the depreciation deduction. So building that rental portfolio is a great gold diagnosis. And I don't want, and this is going to dovetail into the third best strategy, but my third favorite strategy right now. A tax deduction is very valuable, even if you're not using it in the current year. Okay, that's just something to consider. So building that rental portfolio is a great gold diagnosis.
So let's do an example. Let's say you own some stocks and you get a dividend every year. What is your tax burden on that dividend every single year?
Yeah, well, it depends on your marginal tax rate. So, and there are special rates for qualified dividends. So if you had owned the stock for more than a year versus not more than a year, but let's just for argument's sake say 25%, with the state. It could be as low as 15, but you're still giving, let's use an example, Mark. Let's say you have $100,000, you get paid a 5% dividend. So $5,000 and you reinvest it. Well, you don't get any deduction for reinvesting those dividends. You're paying tax on that $5,000. Well, look, if it was real estate and you reinvested it, you'd get the 1031 exchange. So that's why real estate's such a tax advantaged industry. Mm-hmm. And you don't get a depreciation deduction. So if you bought the stock for $100,000, you don't get to deduct the cost of that stock until you sell it. Well, with the real estate, you get to deduct the cost of the real estate using depreciation from the beginning. And even if you finance 80% of it, 75% of it. That's cash flow versus tax flow. It doesn't matter if you pay cash for a rental property or if you finance a portion of it, you still get to take the depreciation deduction, assuming that you're not buying it in a self-directed IRA and that sort of stuff. So, but great segue into our third and final top 3 strategies for real estate investor: cost segregation study. Cost segregation study is great for the red diagnosis, meaning I'm looking for an immediate tax deduction, in gold. So let me talk about cost seg study real quickly, and then I'm going to show you actually a sample report today. With the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, what happened was, for the first time, real estate, instead of writing, like, let's use a single family home, instead of writing off the cost of the building portion of your real estate over a 27.5-year period, we can go in and we can pick apart the tangible personal property portion, nice alliteration there, of the real estate, and take an immediate deduction, which is called bonus depreciation, for that portion. And the reason that that's important is that now that's immediate, that's deductible year 1. And depending on your status as either a passive investor or real estate professional, there are some rules with short-term rental properties that you should be aware of. But regardless of if you're taking a deduction immediately for that or over the next few years, that's a really nice thing to have, getting that bonus depreciation year 1. And it doesn't matter if you finance a property or pay cash. So instead of deducting that property over 27.5 years, you're front loading the deduction for a portion of that. Now, to be able to do that, you have to do an IRS compliant cost segregation study. Now, a lot of times people hear about these things, but it's almost like, man, I've heard about a certain animal, but I've never seen it in the wild. Well, we're going to show you one in the wild here. This right here is a sample cost segregation study report. And what you're seeing is it's a $400,000, this is just a sample, right? A $400,000 property, okay? And in general, you usually have to write it off over 27.5 years. In this case, the immediate deduction, which is right here where my cursor is, because we were able to reclassify about $104,000 of the asset as to tangible personal property. So the 5, 7, and 15-year asset classes built into that real estate are immediately deductible. So in this case, someone bought this property for $400,000. They may have only put down $80,000. They're getting an immediate deduction of $108,000 in 2022.
Massive.
That $108,000 deduction, depending on if it's either going to offset your current year income based on your status as a real estate professional or not, or it's going to be considered passive loss, which could still be used to offset passive income or in the future.
Yeah, I love that right there, because the majority of the investors out there, watching the SOFA Summit, they're not real estate professional status. We can go into the benefits a little bit later if you are REP status. So let's say you're a business owner, a doctor, an engineer, and you bought your first or fifth, rental property, and essentially, and you make more than, because there's the cutoffs of if you make $100,000 or $150,000. So, and you make over $150,000, and that's you. This is still a massive benefit, because this is how you pay 0 tax on the cash flow, right? That right there is massive in that very first year. And then, well, what happens with the leftover depreciation? Well, it just rolls to the next year. So you just look at your net cash flow and then just keep adding the depreciation to it to cancel it out, essentially, right? So you don't have to pay any tax on this year's cash flow. Well, then you have leftover depreciation, and then you go to the second year, and then the third year, and then the fourth year. And so basically what we did the math, and it's 10 plus years of no tax on your cash flow, which is massive. And this is something that every single investor out there can do, because the cost segregation study is $400 and it's extremely easy, and you can do it from the comfort of your home. So it's definitely something, that we recommend, everyone at least look into, because of course, like Chris said, the whole goal is to, pay the least amount of tax and keep the most amount of money in your pocket. And this is how you do it.
Right. And this is that cash flow doesn't equal tax flow. So let's say in this property is $400,000 you spent, and again, we're going 30,000 foot view, right? You put $100,000 down. and your net cash flow from the $400,000 property is, I mean, let's just say it's $600 a month. I'm just making numbers up. Okay. That means that at $600 a month, that's $7,200 a year. If you get a $100,000 deduction, you're not going to pay tax for probably 15 years on any of the, and if
Zero tax on the cash flow.
on any of your cash flow. And if someone inherits a property, all that depreciation deduction gets wiped away and they get to set it up for the fair market value in the future. So
as in they get
again,
they get to do their own cost segregation study once, and because the depreciation schedule resets, right?
right. And this is more advanced, but if you're in a community, if you're in certain states where you have two spouses, in some states, if one spouse passes away and it's owned jointly, the surviving spouse gets a double step up in basis. They'll at least get a step up for half of it. So again, we got to keep this, but the point is, the teaching tax flow system is going to help you figure out, I'm not saying to implement the cost seg study. Diagnose, prescribe, IQ test, implement. The cost seg study, just because it's not going to provide an immediate tax deduction, it still could pass our tax. If I told you you're going to get 10 to 15 years of tax-free income, especially if you're a high income earner and tax rates are going up, that's very attractive. And if you have other properties that have passive income, because maybe you paid them off, you could offset that. So
Definitely. And why don't we dive into the next strategy of, okay, so this is a little bit more advanced, but we have multiple investors that have done this. Let's say that you are the business owner, you are the doctor, the lawyer, engineer, whatever that may be, and your significant other, they don't have an actual, job or own their own business, but they really like real estate. Well, you can have your significant other, take over the real estate business and become a real estate professional and qualify for that RAP status. Now, there's a lot of certain regulations and documentation that you have to be able to qualify. But if your spouse is able to qualify for REP status, well, then you can go and buy this, single family home, get $100,000 first year depreciation deduction. And now you can use that deduction against your active income, against your income as a doctor, as an engineer, right? To just lower everything.
Right. And exactly. So if you received let's keep it easy, $100,000 immediate tax deduction, and you're in the 35% marginal tax rate situation, you would reduce your tax burden by $35,000 in this case. If you own, so you really didn't put down 100 grand. You actually only put down 65 grand. So now your ROI is even better. But again, that's the teaching tax flow system, we have a lot of educational, we have a lot of classes, and we empower people, and it'll assist in explaining, how to track your hours for rep status. What is rep status? So I encourage you, that's a great segue to, we have a special QR code just for Sofa Summit folks. If you're watching at home, you can just scan this with your phone. It'll take you to this website, the teachingtaxflow.com with the Sofa Summit Memphis. We're going to have a special introductory offer for anyone who's watched the Sofa Summit. It'll take you to this website right here. And all you have to do is put in your name, email, and phone number, and we will reach out, understanding that you are an attendee of the Sofa Summit with a special offer to join the teaching tax flow community.
Well, thank you very much for offering that. That's great.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We've enjoyed working with your customers and clients and owners and investors. And this is the opportunity we have to work with as many as possible, and empower them, and also empower the people, their centers of influence.
Love that. Love that. So if you own rental properties, you have to have a CPA that specializes in tax flow, specializes in reducing your tax burden. And I personally think, Chris and his group are some of the best in the entire country. So feel free to contact them. You can have a free consultation. Definitely check out the QR code. They really value education as well. And that's something that, there's a lot going on with the tax code for sure. And so because of that, it's always recommended to talk to a professional. And I think Chris is one of the best. So thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you. No, thank you. And yes, I think everyone's going to enjoy the Teaching Tax Flow ecosystem. We are also working with other, not only our firm, but other CPAs that understand real estate. And I'm excited for people to check that out. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Chris. And off to our next session. See you soon. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, we'd like to take a brief moment today to say thank you to our sponsor again, Delta Title Services. Doug Beatty, he is a great attorney here in Memphis, very respectable, has been in the business for 3 decades. He definitely will take care of you. He's helped me on some of my personal properties that I've bought, and they just have great, outstanding customer service. So we're super grateful for them for helping us out today and sponsoring us.
Yeah, we do hundreds of closings every single year with Delta Title. So number one, they give us a volume discount that we can pass along to our investors, which is always important. But also, they have great customer service and great communication. We have one individual, just that direct point of contact. Her name's Leslie. She controls all of our files, and she's just really responsive from an email and a phone call perspective, which is always nice during a closing, just to make sure that everything goes smoothly, make sure that the actual dollars that are getting transferred are down to the penny, and to help you with any questions that you have about the HUD or the Alta. So just want to say a big shout out again to Delta Title Services and Doug Beatty and Leslie, their team. They are rock stars. And so that's it. Hope
Back
to
to the
see you
show.
guys. Yeah, back to the show.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the next session for the 2022 SOFA Summit. I'm fired up for our upcoming speaker. He's an individual that we have been working with for the last 5 years now. We have done hundreds of transactions together, and his name is Greg Iverson. Greg, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to crossing over that threshold of 1,000 together. We've got to be getting close one of these days.
Yeah, we'll be experts here soon. I love it. I love it. So
Yes.
Greg, he is one of our preferred lenders. And when it comes to having debt as a whole, there's the good debt and the bad debt, right? Bad debt, credit card loans, things that aren't going to actually give you a return on your investment. But then the good debt, quality leverage, is exactly what Greg is here to focus on, because it is a safe and secure way to increase your return on your investment on your rental property portfolio. But you need to make sure that you're working with someone that is an expert in rental properties and isn't just a lender that focuses on homeowner loans. Recommend someone that has their own portfolio and someone that this is their main focus day in and day out. So without further ado, Greg, why don't you take it?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Mark. I remember when we first, well, let me just back up a little bit. So I was an investor prior to ever doing investment loans. And for the longest time, I kind of ran in these 2 different worlds where I was building my own rental portfolio, and then I was doing mainly primary residence mortgage loans. And then one day it hit me, and it was around the time that I met you, that if I could marry these 2 together, it's like the best of both worlds, because I have a passion for both of them, but I had never really let them cross paths and kind of organically grow together. And I remember when I first discovered it, I was just like mind blown. I'm like, wow, there are so many opportunities out here as a mortgage lender, but also to learn more and more about the investment arena myself, that obviously could help our clients and, of course, benefit my own family as well. And Admittedly, when we first jumped in, and you probably remember some of these growing pains, our small team of 2 at that point, myself and one other, we realized there was a lot that goes into it, and it's it's almost like rebuilding the infrastructure and the ability to close those types of loans, just with different moving parts and things like that. So, back to your point, not all lenders embrace investment type loans, but I will say the ones that you work with and the ones that do embrace it, it's something that we absolutely fall in love with and kind of build our entire organization around that. It's kind of business, a business in and of itself at the end of the day. So super excited to be here, and obviously for the relationship as well. And always a fun time. Not that I didn't like coming down for Memphis in May. I definitely enjoyed that, but it is very convenient to do it here from my my so-called sofa here, which just happens to be my office. So yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right. Yeah. Share your screen and fire away.
A couple things, Mark. So this one I divided up into 2 different categories. One would be, which we touched on a little bit last year, but every time I go back and read this, I'm absolutely blown away again, about paying cash versus leverage, what the actual returns are by taking on leverage. So I'm going to kick off a little bit on that and run through some of the math again that we talked about last year as well, but just to kind of brush up on that. The other piece I want to talk about is on the other end of that, the seasoned investor that, or even the beginning investor that's thinking about, okay, my plan is to go to 10 to 20 to 30 homes. What do I need to be aware of? What does that arena look like once we've exhausted, the golden ticket loans, I guess, or the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans that most of us have become accustomed to? That's where the non-QM, non-qualified mortgage is what that stands for. That's where that world comes into play. So I'd like to just, again, some broad strokes. I don't want to dive all the way down the rabbit hole of the guidelines and things like that, but more make your clients and your followers aware of it, while also kind of showing some of the cool features, because one of the best things about these types of loans, well, the ability to scale is a huge thing, but the other piece of it, Mark, is the ability to underwrite these loans on the merits of the property. And what I mean by that is, let's say, Mark, you don't document your income necessarily, or you just began a new business, you're self-employed, and we're not able to use that income in a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac scenario, but you're buying a phenomenal investment property that cash flows. We can actually underwrite that property based on the cash flow of it, underwrite that loan based on the cash flow of the property. So super cool options out there. They come in and out of style, but I really just want to expose those here. So
yeah,
that being said,
I think that's really powerful to chime in there. I mean, I remember myself personally. I mean, I was a 1099 originally, and so I wanted to go buy these single family rental properties, and it definitely made it it was a roadblock. Right? Because as a 1099, you need to have 2 years of tax returns there. It's like, well, I don't want to wait 2 years. So if it would have had something, like this back in the beginning days, could have allowed you to get started much quicker.
You're exactly right. And a lot of people are in that position, whether it's that particular case, or they've been in a job for 20 years and finally looked in the mirror and said, you know what, I can do this on my own just as well or better. Why not do it? But at the same time, not wanting to slow down their path to financial freedom, So, all right, well, let's jump in then. So, this again, kind of geared towards my ready to build that real estate empire, not knowing where to start. Do they pay in cash? Do they take on leverage? And then ultimately, once they reach that mark of, 10 Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac properties, what's next? So real quick on me, I know we talked about this quite a bit, but I began in the real estate investment space back in 2006 after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, used a line of credit to essentially do the burst strategy. Now, the reason I even include this right here is the burst strategy versus turnkey, they're like opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to investing. And the reason I'm on this call, of course, today, but the reason that I educate so many clients on the benefits of turnkey is I've lived in that world, Mark, and like you and I were kind of talking about a little bit before we jumped on here, you have a whole company dedicated to that. What we're talking about here today is the client that wants to have a passive type of an income. They don't want to be MIP. They don't want to rehab a whole bunch of houses, have a dedicated crew and all that kind of thing. They want truly a passive, different type of lifestyle down the road. That's what we're after. But anyway, so owned a lot of different types of properties, sold some over time, but at one point about 75 units. And then of course I've been ranked as a top lender, both in the state here in Missouri where I'm located, but also nationally, which is because of the investment world and the wonderful clients like MIP and of course many of your other clients that we've had an opportunity to work with many times over. So
aren't you number one? Aren't you number one in Missouri?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. As a matter of fact, yes. Thank you. Right on cue. I'll just send me your address so I can make sure I send that gift card. No, last year I was. Yes, we were proud to be ranked the top unit lender in the entire state last year. Thanks to people like you. So again, we're gonna kick this off with leverage or not. What do those returns look like? We'll do a quick math exercise, really just to illustrate that. We'll talk about those non-QM products, kind of pros and cons of them, and then we'll recap the high level. What are the main ones to look out for? Main one being the one that you can underwrite the property based on the cash flow rather than the income of the actual borrower, and then a few resources just to keep you going. So when you talk about cash versus financing, you talk about cash flow, the ability to scale. What are your cash on cash rates of return? I would say when I talk to someone that is just dead set on paying in cash, it's the sleep factor, that they're not going to get in over their head. They're not going to go underwater, things like that. There's a lot of value in that, and I would not ever be one to argue against it. However, for the other set of the population, which there are many, that really want to be able to leverage, scale quickly, overall grow it faster and achieve greater returns, there's really no better way to do it than leverage. You're dealing with other people's money. Of course, interest rate and loan terms are very, very important. Again, looking at cash on cash and the ability to scale. So what is cash on cash? So cash on cash rate of return, at the end of the day, it calculates the cash income earned on the cash invested in the property. So it's really a marker when you're thinking about, do I make a higher down payment or do I make this bare minimum down payment and then use the remainder to invest it elsewhere? You really want to figure out what is that cash earning on a cash on cash return basis. So let's do a quick little math problem just to illustrate paying in cash versus taking on leverage. So we've got $100,000 to spend, and we're trying to decide, do I buy one $100,000 house or do I buy five $100,000 houses where I make a 20% down payment? Again, we're using rough numbers here. I know there are closing costs and things that come into play, but I just want to make it a simple illustration here. So do you buy five or do you buy one? Pay in all cash or do you take on five loans? It's the same $100,000 regardless. Each home rents exactly the same, $1,150 per month, carries a tax and insurance payment of $175. Other expenses, maintenance, management, things like that, average about $350. So the total monthly expenses, not counting mortgage payment then, are $525 on this particular property. So our cash return on investment, again, it's just $1,150 minus $525 gives us $625 in cash flow. So annual cash flow is $7,500 total. So then what we do is we take $7,500, divide that by our $100,000 investment, we get 7.5% return. Not bad. When you compare that with maybe the S&P 500 that kicks off 10% per year, and you don't dive into real estate or have any of the things that come with real estate, kind of tough to argue, you know. Obviously you're not factoring in appreciation, some of those other things, but just purely looking at this, not as exciting as I would hope for in real estate. Now, this is where it gets exciting though, the financed ROI. So using a 20% down payment, this investor instead would choose to buy 5 homes, each valued at $100,000, 80% loan. Now, this is the piece that it's a little bit wishful thinking. I put the interest rate at 4.5 because I want to get back there. We're not there currently, but we were for quite a while, as you know. So Take that for what it's worth. They are a little bit higher than that right now. However, we are seeing them, as we talked about before we jumped on, touching back into the something with a 5 in front of it, which is super exciting for us. So anyway, once we factor in that mortgage payment and those monthly expenses that we talked about previously, those come out to $930. So about a cash flow of $220 in this case, or $2640 annually. Now, when you take and multiply that by 5 houses, that gives you a total cash flow then of $13,200. Not quite double, but it's getting awfully close. You take that $13,200 divided by the $100,000, all of a sudden your cash on cash rate of return, just because you took out a loan. That's the only thing you did differently. You bought the exact same MIP houses. They're managed the exact same. Everything is exactly the same. Your return goes to 13.2% from 7.5%. Now that's where it gets pretty exciting for me. You know, when you couple that with appreciation and many other factors, that to me is very, very intriguing. Not to mention the ability to acquire 5 houses as opposed to 1, scale up faster, and so on and so forth. So hopefully I've convinced you to at least consider financing. Now, pros of it, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac terms are long-term fixed rates right now. They have been for a long time. We definitely expect them to stay that way. Higher cash on cash rates of return, the ability to scale up faster, obviously. The cons of it, reduced cash flow. 2008, we all remember that. The possibility that you could go underwater if those properties go down in value and you have loans on them. Obviously, that's not an exciting thing. Although my advice if we ever get to that point, which I don't believe we'll get back there, but if we do, the best advice I'll be giving, I know I will be saying the same thing, is, well, I would buy more. Hang on, know this tide will change, and buy as many as you can right now, because this is not a long-term thing. But anyway, that'll be down the road.
And you're speaking from experience, because you bought the majority of your properties right after 2008 at just one of the best times in the history to be a real estate investor.
Literally the greatest thing that ever happened to me, which I always do feel a little guilty when I say it, because it was obviously a painful thing for a lot of people, and I don't want to make light of that. But I see different markets, COVID, 2008, things like that, really for the opportunity that they are. And I think when you look at it from that lens, Mark, you would probably say the same thing, and you and I talk about this all the time. Where's the opportunity right now? There's always an opportunity. It's just a matter of getting past the fear and identifying, okay, so my houses are a little bit underwater right now, or they're worth a little bit less than what I paid. But wow, I've got an opportunity to buy another 20 at these values. Imagine what they'll look like when they go back to where they were just 5 years ago.
And the psychological aspect of it is, hindsight's 2020, right? So post 2008, when you bought your houses, it's easy to say now in 2022 that you're a genius, but back in 2009, 10, and 11, I bet a lot of people thought you were crazy.
Yeah, completely. My mom did. My mom thought I was going bankrupt. I will admit, those first couple of years, it was purely on trusting myself and the process that I was on, or that I was engaging in. Because there weren't a whole lot of signs for those first few years that, yeah, this is really working well. However, year 5, year 10, now looking back, year 15 or 20, it's like, okay, wow, that was the right thing. But obviously hindsight's always 2020. So anyway, pros and cons of cash then, of course. Pros of cash, quick closings, no contingencies, no interest expense. So you have better cash flow. Maybe better sleep for some people. That wouldn't necessarily help me sleep better, but it definitely does. And you can, of course, finance later. So we'll have some in the case of quick closings, they would pay cash, but then they take out a loan with us a couple months down the road. So you always do still have that ability. One of the biggest cons of paying in cash is slower growth. That 100,000 is spent, and it's a matter of saving that 100,000 essentially to start all over again, and that could take five years. So that's a big piece of it, just slowing down the ability to acquire those properties. So what's next? So we're reaching 10 finance properties. What do we what do we do at that point? Or we're just getting started and we're thinking, okay, I'm going to really go all in. I'm going to get to my 10. And then what am I going to do? So I like to always have this conversation with people from the very start. But more than anything, once we get to that point, this is a very, very important conversation, because once they fall in love with it, like I did, they don't want to stop at 10 and they don't want to stop at 20. They want to continue on, So let me just mark something here real quick.
Yeah, so while you talk there, we can dive in. There's some more really incredible, benefits of financing, and that is the appreciation rate is now leveraged. So if you buy in cash and get a 5% appreciation, well, that's a 5% return on your money. But if you put 20% down, you're only paying for 1/5 of the actual property. So you have to multiply the appreciation rate by 5. And that is going to be what your actual return on investment is from an appreciation standpoint. So now your 5% appreciation on a house where you put 20% down is a 25% return in equity of appreciation. And that difference right there is for a lot of people, just having that leveraged appreciation, building that equity, and having a tenant pay down your mortgage, because at the end of 30 years, you own the property in full. And so now that is a return. It's going into that savings account, which is the house, every single time that tenant pays rent, which pays for the mortgage. That in itself is a little bit over a 10% return annualized over 30 years. So just having a tenant pay down your mortgage and the leveraged appreciation, for a lot of people, that's all they want. There's a lot of larger, higher net worth, institutional type investors that they buy negative cash flowing properties, and it's mind blowing. Like, why would you do that? But they just want that A-class property that has that best chance to appreciate and to just have a really, low maintenance, low issues, and low headaches. Now, our focus here in Memphis is to be cash flow positive, but it's just interesting to note there's a lot of people out there that just want those two benefits alone, and that's the power of leverage.
It is so good. And so what was the appreciation rate last year in Memphis?
Last year in Memphis, appreciation rate was 20%, which is
20%.
Which is not, that's not normal. That's
not normal. No, but just to humor each other for a second. So, and over the last decade, it's been on average 6% a year or so, which again, historically, that's probably not going to hold forever. But when you think about that, if you put down a 20% down payment and you bought a house that appreciated 20% in 1 year, isn't that just wild?
100% return on your money in 1 year.
More than that, because it's actually that appreciation is based on the entire package, the 100% of the purchase price. It's just So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's something I've really focused in on. When interest rates start to go up and the party is I wouldn't say the party's over, but in a way it is. The COVID interest rate environment is over. You always start to look at other ways to justify what you're doing, and let me dig in and look at some of these other returns. That alone, when you think about the leveraged appreciation, it's like mind blowing, and that's not something you can really do in other investments.
No, not at all. I mean, my number one favorite part of owning rental properties and having leverage is just going down to the bare bones minimum. Let's say there's no appreciation. Let's say there's no rent growth. Let's say there's no cash flow at all. And all you do is have a tenant pay off your mortgage. You put 20% down and that tenant pays off that mortgage. The fact that that's over a 10% return on your money on average, and that's the bare bones minimum. So that's already comparable to the stock market, because obviously with the stock market, you're going to have to pay taxes on those gains. So kind of knocks it down closer to that 10%. So we're already equal. So basically bare bones minimum owning rental properties is already equal to the average of the S&P 500. And then of course, appreciation, inflation, rent growth, cash flow, like it just fires you up. And it's like, okay, this is why we're doing it. This is why we're spending the time to educate and learn about this alternative asset class.
Yeah, no, you're so spot on with it. So, all right. So now that we've kind of talked about that, because that is that's the main point well, several of those, but thanks for bringing that up, because those are the main points I always really want to illustrate for people, that particularly those that they haven't gotten started yet, or they're just getting started. They're thinking, why do this? This seems more complex. I got to learn a lot more than I do if I just put my money in 401k or put it with a financial advisor, things like that. So no, I'm glad we covered that. What I wanted to wrap up with are this world of non-QM. So for those that are reaching that 10 level, maybe you already have reached that, or if you're like me and you're thinking about buying your first one, but at the same time you're thinking about buying your 50th, or other, of course, friends that we've seen grow like that, friends and clients, Mark. It's always worth having this conversation even very, very early on. So non-QM loans, essentially what they are is they're outside of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Private money is financing those, like, big hedge funds and things like that are financing those. So they can write a little bit different rules than what Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac does. And specifically in the investment world, the approach has been, well, let's look at the confining or the the parts of Fannie Mae that people don't like, or the ones that make it to where it's not as attractive of a loan, and then let's kind of modify our guidelines to fill that niche, with the biggest one being when you're capped, when you get to 10 finance loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac say, we're out. Good luck. It's been fun. We hope all the best down the road. This non-QM world identifies that as, wow, we've got a lot of people out there that Mark and Greg know that they work with, that they want to go big and continue on. Let's fill that gap for them. So pros, again, unlimited ability. You do still have unlimited ability to acquire rental properties. You do still have long-term fixed rate financing options available, asset-based lending, ability to buy in an LLC, and potentially some more flexible underwriting guidelines. Now, on the con side of that, typically a little bit higher rates and costs than Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Minimum loan amounts. So sometimes in certain cases, there are properties that can be a great investment, but these do not quite, the prices or the amount borrowed is not quite enough to meet the minimums. Guidelines can change, and funding capacity, like we were kind of talking about before we jumped on here. These are not always funded. COVID was a good example where private investors said, hey, let's step back and think about things. Let's watch this play out. Let's not fund loans right now until we know what the heck's going to happen. Now, of course, jumped right back in the game, but that caught us all off guard. We were not prepared for it. Matter of fact, we had some of these loans out there that we were kind of holding on to, wondering, okay, what are we going to do with them now, type thing, So a few different products in this world. And the biggest one I want to focus on today is the investor cash flow. So it's underwritten based on the merits of the property versus your personal income, or the qualifying characteristics of you as a borrower. It's more looking at that property that you're acquiring and saying, heck yeah, this is a great investment. We trust Mark's a good guy, but even if he doesn't make a lot of money during the day or have a good job or things like that, this property is a good asset, a good investment for him. In the single rental property loans, a few of those characteristics, but essentially you just have one loan, one property. Portfolio rental loans, however, you can have, and I've had these before, 20 properties on one loan. A little bit easier to manage, things like that. Again, something outside the box of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Here's where it gets good. The investor cash flow mortgage. So credit scores down to 640, so there's some flexibility there. Biggest thing is no personal income required to qualify. So saves you from submitting income statements, tax returns, all of those headaches. Loans all the way up to $1.5 million, but like I said, there is that minimum of $75,000. In certain cases, it's even as high as $125,000 to $150,000. DSCR. So this deals with debt service coverage ratio of 1%. Essentially, that the rents need to cover the expenses of the property. Doesn't need to be a whole lot more than that, which at this point in time is pretty liberal overall. again, no personal income. Property can be in LLCs, potentially a little bit more flexible underwriting. 40-year loan options now. I think you and I were talking about this recently, Mark, where these are coming back into play. These 40-year, these are non-QM. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they do not embrace that world yet, like the non-QM space might. And then, of course, non-warrantable condos as well could be an option. Fix and flip. So again, I don't want to go all the way down the rabbit hole other than to let people know these are available. This is not something that we're specifically talking about today as it relates to turnkey property purchasing. But there are a lot of different options here in this non-QM space. So again, single property rental loans, there's portfolio, there are investor cash flow, and then these fix and flip options available. So one more thing I want to cover real quick. So we talk about, and I get this question all the time where, okay, so cash, down payment, how do I actually, like, what is that? Does it need to be cash in a briefcase? Does it need to be cash in my checking account? And the beauty of it, and the way that I've structured a lot of our purchases in the past, no, it does not. You know, you can use private lenders. You can use hard money to acquire that. You can use a line of credit on, you know, you may have a Wells Fargo brokerage account, for instance. You can take a line of credit against that functions as cash, but you don't actually need to withdraw your money.
And to ask a quick question, this is only for the non-QM side. This isn't for the golden ticket Fannie Freddies to be able to use a hard money loan as your 20% down payment.
Great question. I'm glad you asked that. So certain of these do apply to non-QM, certain apply to both. So margin line of credit applies to both. HELOCs and second mortgages apply to both. Hard money, no. Typically Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, unless it's hard money on another property that's paid off or something, but we won't go all the way into that. But whole life insurance, cash value, you can use that on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Can we use a rich uncle? That would be more in the non-QM space unless he's actually going on that financing with you. Financial partners, you know, and then at the end of the day, what you really want to look at is what is your cash on cash rate of return by taking on that leverage. But I always like to talk about that because a lot of people, when they're strategizing and we start to talking, they say, well, you know, I do have this out there. You know, I do have a stock account. There's not a ton of money in it, but there's 100,000 there. Well, you can take a line of credit and potentially have 60,000 available. That can be your down payment on a Fannie Mae loan, you know? So a lot of different ways to, and that's the other thing, Mark, I really have fallen in love with in real estate is there's no one size fits all approach. There's so many ways that you can, once you're clear on what you're after and what you truly want to do, there's so many different directions you can go with it. It's just, it's amazing. It's like you can learn every day. You know, you never get to the point where it's like you've mastered it. You know, even you who literally have done this thousands of times, you know, I'm sure every day you're learning, you know.
Well, it's
probably mainly for me, but you probably learn from yours too, here and there.
Amen.
But, you know, it's
That's
something that you're constantly a student of it, you know, and so much can change overall.
That's also one of the fun parts about real estate. I mean, just look at all the podcasts out there. It's very entertaining for a lot of people. The majority of people that learn about real estate, a lot of people probably on the Sofa Summit right now have never invested in real estate, will never invest in real estate, but they'll consume hours and hours of education and content because at the end of the day, it's kind of fun.
Very exciting.
I definitely think so. And these book recommendations, those are top notch.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up with these. Every time I speak, I get so many questions on books and things like that. And it's been these are ones that I always go back to, you know, when I'm looking for, okay, it's January 1, what are we going to do this year? You know, these are very, you know, mindset driven type.
Definitely. I think the biggest one for the listeners to this particular session is the Wealthy Code with George Antone down there.
Did I include the? Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's at the very bottom. I was literally just reading that one last night. So It's a really good one, to talk about the benefits of leverage and how to make sure to use it properly and how to properly calculate some, higher level, but very important numbers to make sure that you're taking on the proper debt. Because once you go and leave this Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conventional loan, you can get 10. That's easy because the loan terms are almost the same for everyone, right?
Yes,
20% down,
exactly.
fixed percent interest rate, 30-year AM. That's easy. But as soon as you go into this non-QM portfolio commercial world, the debt piece is equally, if not more important. It can be the difference between a bad deal and a good deal. Let's just
I was just going to say it can make or break your investment at
yeah,
the end of the day.
100%.
And I think also giving more credibility to working with a reputable company like MIP, a reputable lender, that those are folks that have your best interest in mind and know the world. It's what we live and breathe every single day. Like you said, I mean, you're reading the wealthy code. A, probably you love that stuff, but B, it makes you a better operator. It makes you more valuable to your clients because you're spending the time to educate yourself on that type of stuff after. Yeah, it's interesting. That book was given to me by our friend who I think you're having on as well today, or maybe tomorrow when you have him on. But Scott Saunders, he sent that to me, and I think I got it in the mail and sat down and read the whole thing, in a matter of a day or so.
That's exactly how we heard of it. He said he put it in the mail, and I got too antsy and just bought it online and just read it online because I couldn't wait.
Yeah. George must love him because he's a big proponent of his stuff.
He's a raving fan, that's for sure. So anyways, you out there listening to the Sofa Summit, highly recommend the books on that list. That's a really great all-encompassing. You read all the books on that list, and then you'll say, I get it and I'm in, or this is not what I want to do. I want to stick to the traditional routes and put it in a index fund in the S&P and be done.
I was just going to say it at the end of the day. That will tell you if you're going to fall in love with it or if it's just not really exciting, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that'll tell you pretty quickly. So Mark, I want to wrap up obviously with, here's my contact info. Here's how to reach me. We love the space. We like strategizing with clients that are like me when I was 24, 25 years old, and I had this huge ambition, but I didn't have anybody to give me the guidance without seeking them out and asking them and things like that. We love being in that role where we've seen it, we've lived that world ourselves personally, myself and my team, but we've also worked with thousands of clients that are seeking out financial freedom. We've learned a lot by that. We've learned a lot, Mark, by coming down and seeing your operation now and then and seeing what really goes into all of this, and what does it take to be successful in acquiring rental property. So that being said, I don't know if you have some closing.
No, how do people get a hold of you?
There it is right there. So the biggest thing, the mobile number on there. Call or text is typically the easiest way to reach me. My mobile, again, is that 636-751-1068. If you happen to be in St. Louis, Missouri at all, I'd love for you to stop by. We're always excited when clients just happen to be going through town and they stop in to say hello. And hopefully, like we've talked about, sooner than later, we'll have an office in Memphis as well. So we'll be able to participate when you all have clients in town too. So
exciting.
But ultimately, text or call me. It's not terribly tricky to get a hold of me. But let me just kind of wrap up with this, Mark. The relationship over time has been super, super valuable, and I really appreciate having me on like this. For those listening and just trying to decide if they want to do this, it is not for everybody. I think we can agree to that. But if you're intrigued by what you're seeing throughout the Sofa Summit, reach out to Mark and his team. I really do mean this when I say, when I have someone come to me and ask me, hey, I want to get into this, who should I call? I said, call Mark. I'll do the loan for you. I'll help you finance it, but give Mark a call. Don't go it alone. Rely on their 100 years of experience in doing this. Build your foundation that way. If you want to go out and flip houses and do your own thing, that's great. I don't want to discourage that, but your chances of success increase considerably when you plug into a group, that you've built out specifically at MIP, and the resources you all have available to you, helps immensely get up over that learning curve and realize, hey, I do like this or I don't like this. Matter of fact, Mark, I've had, I can think right now of, 3-4 friends right off the top of my head that have had just a phenomenal experience that I've, matter of fact, I think I knew them all here from the gym here in St. Louis, and they wanted to get into it. And I said, you're asking the wrong guy. You need to call this Mark guy. He knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. So thank you for that, by the way.
Hey, my pleasure. Appreciate the kind words and the relationship, because that's, for everyone here on the Sofa Summit, it's all about the team. It's all about your boots on the ground. And one of the big benefits of utilizing a lender like Greg is that he has the experience of 75 doors in the portfolio. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that, props to you for being able to build that type of a portfolio. And I'm sure you've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And
thank you. Yes.
that's the thing that you can actually, learn from someone like Greg and someone like us, as opposed to going and just doing it alone, is, we can help educate you to avoid those pitfalls, and increase your chances for success, reduce that risk, and, achieve financial freedom. That's what we're here for at the end of the day. So,
yep.
Well,
100%, man.
That's it. Well, appreciate you, Greg. And for everyone out there on the Sofa Summit, hope you guys enjoyed this session, and off to the next. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the next session for the 2022 Sofa Summit. Super pumped up for this upcoming speaker, someone that we've also been working with for many, many years now, and someone that I personally have been working with my own family. So really love to be able to have that, that relationship with him and his organization. And, something that's really great about his group is that they've really focused on education, and they do a really great job at finding a process and just following that process to be replicatable and duplicatable. But also, when you think about being a real estate investor, is how can you get that and one? How can you actually use the same dollar just more intelligently? How can you use that to get additional benefits from that same dollar, an additional return from that same dollar, and how to make it easy and build it out in a process? And that's exactly what we have here with Ryan Lee at Cash Flow Tactics. Ryan, welcome.
My man, Mark, it's so good to be on the microphone with you today. And it's crazy that you said 2022. I think this might be the third or the fourth time that I've been on this with you. And it's amazing to see how the conversation, the underlying principles have stayed the same, right? Of how to build wealth, how to become financially free, what tools we use in what sequential order, but how it's applied has changed because, man, our economy, our world, our dollars have changed so much since we started this process 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it's been interesting to watch it evolve. So I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to have today around what that evolvement looks like and how people can appropriately take action based on both the challenges and the immense opportunities in 2022.
Yeah, amen. That's what's really fun about real estate right now in 2022 is it's working out extremely well. I'm really fortunate to be a real estate investor. When you see all my friends that are investing in the stock market and they're crying, and you see people
crying,
you see the crypto investors in there crying, and then it's like, oh, hey, well, I'm that real estate investor over here and I'm thriving. So but it's all about being smart, having a great team, having a great process, especially to navigate today's environment. So it's excited to be able to talk about that and share that with our clients. So why don't you just start off and just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story and your background?
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, Mark, as you mentioned, I lead a company. I feel so privileged and honored to be able to lead a company called Cash Flow Tactics. Our mission is so simple, right? Our mission is to empower you, an individual, with a principle-based approach to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. Now, I used all of those words in that sequence for a very specific reason. We have a very clear definition and a measurement for success. And I think that is one of the major things that is lacking in financial world today. It's put your money here, put your money there, retire one day. But there's no way for anyone to ever really measure, am I making any progress? Am I actually winning? Is it actually working? But the unique thing about financial freedom versus the idea and the concept of retirement planning is retirement planning is all about a destination. It's one day with your fingers crossed. Hopefully you'll have enough money, right? And no one knows what enough money is. No one really knows when that day will come. And no one really knows how to make any meaningful impact to making that day not just a dream, but inevitable reality. And so we throw that concept of retirement away first and foremost, and we define success as it relates to money with financial freedom. And that's a very beautiful and a simplistic definition. When your cash flow is greater than your expenses, my friend, you're financially free, right? And financial freedom is not a destination like retirement. Mark, before we press record today, we were talking about this idea of a lifestyle, right? If you want to or need to, because of inflation, increase your expenses as your lifestyle evolves and expands, then financial freedom expands with that. You know that cash flow has to exceed expenses. So you know what lever needs to be pulled to stay constantly in integrity, to be financially free and live a financially free lifestyle. And I know for a lot of people, probably less in your community, Mark, because you bring so much value and so many assets to the table to help them achieve financial freedom. But I think a lot of people in the world, they struggle with the idea of even thinking that financial freedom is possible. So the next thing in what I said is we use a principle-based approach to achieving financial freedom in 10 years or less. Now, the next thing I want to really dive into with that is how important is it to have a principle? Right, Mark? I think if we can really boil our life down to its most simplistic form, there are principles, universal truths that govern every aspect of our life. It governs our personal health, right? If I'm gaining too much weight, it's probably a principle that I'm violating somewhere along the line. I'm not moving enough, or I'm consuming too many calories, or some combination of that. And if I want to change the outcome, my weight, I need to go back and look at the principle and realign my behavior with that principle to get the outcome that I want, right? And so with money, we're never taught principles. I don't know about you, Mark, but man, I grew up in a household where it was just like, hey, don't talk about money because money's bad, right? And so how are we ever supposed to get an outcome of financial freedom or retirement, whatever you want to call it, if we don't know the truth or the principle behind the necessary actions to make it happen? And the last part about what I just said is to define financial freedom in 10 years or less, to measure our success in 10 years or less. And I believe, Mark, and you've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's so awesome to see inside of the community, anyone that has the right principles and consistently puts those principles into action, it's almost inevitable that financial freedom is the net result in a 10-year period of time. And so that's the mission that we stand boldly and declare. That's the movement that we lead. And I will die on this mountain because I believe financial freedom is prerequisite for what the human opportunity actually is, to live a purpose-driven life. But it's money that holds people back from that purpose-driven life more often than not. So that's where I stand. That's what we do. And as you can tell, Mark, I get a little bit excited about it.
Man, I absolutely love that. And so, you've always focused on the education piece, when it comes to investing in real estate here. So why don't you talk a little bit more about, when someone wants to reach out to Cash Flow Tactics, what's the process? What do you guys go through? How are you able to help investors?
Yeah, and I love that you say that. I think, man, it's so interesting. Like when I got into this world of real estate investing, I thought it was simple as I want to invest in real estate. I'm going to therefore go buy a house. Now, from a dollar standpoint, that's all you really had to do is buy a house. But how successful that house turns out to be in, whatever outcome I'm looking for, all depends not necessarily on the house, but on the investor and the education that they have. And so for me, that's really where we start. Is I believe education is the ultimate form of rebellion, of activism, of personal empowerment, right? If we understand that the greatest tool that we have sits right in between our ears, that is the gateway to get us anything that we want. And so if we look at our lives and we say, I don't have the results that I want, I'm not getting the outcomes, or I don't have the things, or I live in the home that I want, it's not an out there problem, right? It's not an investment problem. It's not a real estate problem. It's not a stock market problem. It's an internal problem. You don't know what to do with money to get the outcome that you want. And so education is where we start, because with principles and with personal commitment, then it just becomes, utilizing those principles, utilizing that education to get consistent outcomes. And that's what I get fired up about, because look, I mean, I went to college, you went to college. There was nothing taught around personal finance. It was all about how I might make some money. But as soon as you make some money, what are we told to do? Give it away. You're not smart enough. Go put it in some account, and maybe the stock market, maybe some cryptocurrency, maybe some financial advisor will care more about the success of your money and your goals than you do. And if we look at it that way, we know that that's stupid, right? No one's going to care more about our success than we do, but yet we do very little as human beings across the globe to educate ourselves around money, which is the gateway to what we ultimately want.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what needs to change from a high school perspective. We need to have personal finance. We need to have how to pay your taxes. We need to have the basics, as opposed to, there's a lot of important subjects out there, but I think those should be some of the top ones. And that's why, I learned just about all of this by reading, personal books, right? At the end of the day, got the whole shelf behind you. Like, that's how you figure this space out, right? By personal education. Hence, everyone out here on the Sofa Summit, applause to you guys for actually coming in and learning, yourself. So we've spoken this whole Sofa Summit about investing in single family real estate and how to actually grow that portfolio, achieve that financial freedom. And it's the importance of having the right team, having the right principles, exactly what Ryan was talking about. So how does your program create this and one type strategy, or create a benefit to a real estate investor? Why would someone want to, reach out to you guys?
Yeah, man, I love that. Can I say one thing about the importance of single family homes before we talk about, what we do on our end? I thought in the beginning, Mark, I thought that real estate had to be this complex thing. And I thought, I'm going to buy a couple single family homes, but those are boring, right? I'm going to buy some single family homes, then I'm going to scale up into a multifamily, then I'm going to scale up into a commercial, then I'm going to scale up into a syndication, and blah, 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 on and went, right? But the reality of it is, when I really took a step back and I really understood what we talked about earlier, that an investor is someone who understands how to use a dollar to get an outcome. If I wanted to be successful in all of those other endeavors, I had to develop my investor mindset around syndications, multifamily, apartment complexes, commercial buildings. You can't treat those things passively. You have to understand how to effectively get an outcome in each one of those things. And then furthermore, if I step back and ask myself, what is it that I actually want? I want a financial freedom. I wanted to own and control my time. I did not want to be the best, most elite real estate investor in the world. I wanted real estate to buy my time back, which meant, by definition, simplicity was what I ultimately craved. I wanted a system that I could simply apply to get consistent, predictable results. And I have tested so many forms of real estate, Mark. I have never found anything that gets me closer to simplistic results than single family homes done with the right turnkey company in the right area, period. And so now I got out of all that other stuff and I just double down, buy more single family homes. So I love what you do. I love the expertise that you guys bring to the table. And I love the consistent, predictable results that come as a result of that expertise in single family homes. So kudos to you, man. I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring saying single family homes is the way to go.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So you asked me what we do and how we get this and one concept. I want to introduce a concept that I learned about very early on in my path to becoming financially free. I'll never forget, Mark, and I don't know if I've told this story on these calls before, but this is how it started for me. Like I went to college not with the intention of going to college to get a degree. I just thought that's what you do, right? And so I got my 4-year degree in 2 years. Now, the reason I did that is I just wanted to get through college so I could check that box and go get a professional job. It wasn't about learning for me. I didn't care about that. I love learning, but I didn't like being told what I had to learn. I didn't like following a system that I didn't understand what it was for. So anyway, I went through college pretty quick, but I'll never forget, in college, in my senior year, I was in a marketing program, and there was this dude in my marketing program. There was like 30 of us in this program. And so we took a lot of classes together, and there was this guy who was doing this weird thing, right? He was buying real estate. And I thought, man, that guy is crazy. Like, he guy's crazy. I can barely pay my rent, but this guy's buying real estate. He's crazy. Not only was he buying real estate, he was the only guy in our graduating class that didn't have a job, right? He didn't have a job after college because he was going to focus on being a real estate investor. And I thought, man, that guy's crazy. I'm going to see him on the breadline. 4 years later, I went out in the corporate world, climbed the corporate ladder, threw all my money in the stock market, threw all my money in a 401k. In 2008, wiped me out, right? And I think when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so I came back home. I was living in Texas at the time, and I came back home to Utah over the holidays. And this is shortly after I lost all my money. And I was kind of licking my wounds. I was down on my luck. I didn't know what I was doing anymore because I made all this, made a bunch of money, but I had nothing to show for it. And lo and behold, I ran into Chris. Now, Chris was the dude in college who was buying real estate, and I ran into him in a restaurant, and it was really interesting experience, right? I mean, we exchanged pleasantries, but he had this air of confidence about him that I wanted, I craved, I felt it. And he wasn't bragging, he wasn't trying to rub anything in, but there was something about him that I wanted. And so I said, Chris, dude, you got to tell me what you're doing. Are you still buying real estate? Let me know what's going on. And he's like, yeah, Ryan, I'd love to talk to you. We're here with our families. So why don't you come to my office tomorrow? I came to his office, and I'll never forget this, man. I walked into his office, and I was so used to offices being full of degrees and certifications and all that stuff that meant nothing, right? But I walked into his office, and it was full of pictures of experiences, adventures that he was living, things that he was doing with his family. And I wanted everything about that. I wanted it so bad. And I sat down at that office with him, and I said, Chris, I don't care what it is, like, as long as it's moral, right? I'm not going to go rob people if that's what you're doing. Then as long as it's not, dishonest, I don't care what it is. Just tell me what to do. And he laid out for me a very simple path. And guess what that simple path was? He's like, Ryan, here's what I've done for the last, 4 or 5 years. I made money. I put it in this account. I leveraged that account. I bought real estate. And then I repeated the process. That real estate paid me money. I put it back in that account. I made more money. I put it in that account. I went and bought more real estate, and I just pushed the repeat button over and over. And it was really interesting because I'm like, Chris, cool. Tell me what you do. He's like, that's all I do. I just make money. I keep it, and I turn it into cash flow, and I do it again. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. But what do you do next? He's like, that's all I do, Ryan. Stop being dumb. That's all I do. And so he lined up this thing for me, and I said, okay, cool. If that's the way it is, I'm going to do it. And the first thing he said, because I wanted to go right out and buy real estate. I just want to go buy real estate. He's like, Ryan, you can't buy real estate. You've got to set up a vault first. I'm like, Chris, that sounds so weird. Like, I've never heard of this before ever, but if you tell me to do it, I guess I'll do it. Now, we call it a vault today, but all it is, it's a high cash value investment grade life insurance policy. Now, up to that point, Mark, I had never even heard of life insurance. Now, I should have had it. I had a couple kids at that time. I didn't have any life insurance, but I had certainly never heard of using life insurance as an investment tool. But what Chris had done, he had built a policy that wasn't like the life insurance most people think about. Right? Most people think about life insurance, if they die, their family's taken care of. Mm-hmm. He was actually using life insurance in the exact opposite way. He was maximum funding, meaning he was putting as much money into these policies as he could, because when the money was in the policy, it was with an insurance company that would protect their capital from, or his capital from markets. It would protect his capital from lawsuits and litigation. It would grow his capital at a guaranteed interest rate plus a dividend. But the best thing about it is it was all tax-free, and he could use it as a line of credit. So he basically was building his own bank. He was leveraging that line of credit from his insurance policy, buying real estate, and then dumping his profits back in the life insurance policy. And so every single year, because this policy had compounding, guaranteed contractual returns, his abundance, his wealth was increasing, his cash flow from the real estate was increasing, and he just used those two assets simultaneously, side by side, to build cash flow and build abundance, build cash flow and build abundance. And it was so simple that I kept looking for the complexity. I kept waiting for him to tell me the real secret to build wealth. But the secret to building wealth was make money, keep money, and turn the money that you've kept into cash flow, and simply push the repeat button. And man, that's what we do. We help people understand that their best asset is their ingenuity, their ability to create value, to go out and make money, to solve problems in the world, because dollars follow value. But in the long run, we all know this. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And that's where these life insurance policies come in. You keep your money. Then if all we're doing is just keeping our money in that policy, we can compare it to the stock market or a 401k. But this policy has such a unique advantage. You can leverage, like a line of credit, the value of your policy and have your money grow. That's what the and one asset is I can get the benefit of long-term compounding and I can leverage my capital. And if we leverage our capital to go buy a cash flowing asset, my goodness, Mark, and you're living this, I'm living it.
Yeah,
It
you
turns
got it.
into a amazing machine.
It's
So
more.
that's the game.
It's just more at the end of the day.
It's just more. It's just
Yeah,
better.
it's just better.
Yeah.
It's one of
You want a
those.
cherry on top or not? Let's put a cherry on top.
That's exactly correct. I mean, like the way that I always thought about it was, number one, I'm having a child, here in the end of October. And so, super excited. So like, if I pass away, I've got debts, right? I own real estate, I have liabilities and got student loans, right? And so the life insurance that was already happening. I was already going to get that to protect my family. But then you think, okay, how can I actually utilize this to, like you said, an investment grade, opportunity? And then when you, put the two and two together and couple it with the single family, rental properties here, and to be able to use it as a line of credit because the big question is, well, hey, how do I get more down payment money to grow my real estate portfolio? Right? That's it. How do I get more down payment money to buy more houses? And that's exactly what this is. It's a line of credit against your policy. And it's just absolutely, incredible when you do the math. And that's what blew me away. I was like, okay, let's just none of this, quit talking about how awesome it is. Just show me the numbers.
Yeah.
And just once you see that, you're like, all right, I'll take one. Super excited. Get my wife one. Super excited to get my kid one. Pretty fun.
And I don't know if we have the SOFA summit from last year. Last year, we went through the numbers. We just went through the math of leveraging a policy to buy real estate and kind of walk through that math there. Today, I just wanted to talk about the framework, talk about the philosophy, because I think there's so much complexity in our world today. It's so many moving parts and it feels like things change so fast. But under the surface, here's the crazy part, Mark. Over the last, I don't even know how many centuries, like life insurance dates back all the way to the Roman Empire. I would beg to argue that real estate dates back to like primitive cavemen, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the two assets that have stood the test of time have been life insurance, uniquely designed life insurance policies to keep your money safe, private, and protected, and real estate. And so if we just like, who cares what the fads and trends are? Because if it's a fad and trend, here's the thing I know, it'll be in today and it'll be out tomorrow. But if we can just go back to the basics, like the life insurance, it predates the tax code. Like the life insurance policies and companies that we use, they're the most successful, predictable, historically successful companies in the history of our country. I mean, literally, they're the backbone of the American economy, but yet they're so boring, simple, stupid that no one pays attention to them. So when you have one of these policies, you have a guaranteed contract backed by the most successful companies in the history of our country. And guess what the crazy part is? Go Google, right now or after this video, BOLI, B-O-L-I, and COLI, C-O-L-I. Bank-owned life insurance and corporate-owned life insurance. Banks, this is where they store all of their capital. They don't keep money in banks because they know, well, that's stupid, right? They keep as much money as they can in these type of life insurance contracts. Go Google Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, when he left the NFL to coach University of Michigan, he had over 35% of his contract structured with premiums going into one of these policies because he wanted all the benefits of tax-free, liquidity, accessibility, all the things that these policies do. So look, the reality of it is politicians, wealthy individuals, corporations, banks, they know the value of these concepts. They know the value of using life insurance to keep your money, and they know the value of owning an asset like real estate. And that's how the wealthy get wealthy. That's really all they do is they position themselves to where economic forces like inflation, like taxes, like, fees and all that stuff, rather than those things working against them, which is what most of the financial market is about is, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive inflation? They just position themselves on the side where inflation actually works for them. Taxes actually work for them. Opportunity cost actually works for them. And that's what these things do. Your vault and real estate aligns you with economic factors to where you get wealthy almost despite yourself. Like, Mark, I'm an idiot. I mean, I don't say that lightly. I'm not a very smart individual, but I've become financially free and I've made millions of dollars because all I've done is I've made money, I've kept it, I've turned it into cash flow, and I've pressed the repeat button, period.
Amen. Amen. And I love that you can create generational wealth while also creating a great, becoming financially free yourself in your lifetime. Like it's great to be able to do both. And that's what's so exciting because that's what wealthy generational families do. is they say, okay, when I pass away, how can I, pass on the majority of my funds and, keep it from the government and actually pass it on to my family. And when you do that over and over again, well, boom, you can create an actual empire. So that's one that's great from a generational wealth standpoint. But then the fact that you can use it as a line of credit to be able to get more down payment money to grow the single family home portfolio or grow your assets as well while you're alive it's just icing on the cake at the end of the day. And it's just love that.
It is, man. And you mentioned something that I don't think we oftentimes think about until it's too late, right? I mean, we've been in this game for almost over a decade. And in the last couple of years, man, we've had 3 very young and very active clients of ours pass away, right? One was COVID related. One was, just an accident. And one was an act of terrorism. And it was crazy because, each one of those people, they built their vault with the intention of using it as a line of credit, with the intention of growing their wealth, with the intention of doing all the things that we just talked about. But when things changed, right, when life happened as it does, they were already prepared for that inevitable time. Now, we all think we're going to live forever. And I hope that you and I and everyone listening to this are the ones that do. But life will happen. And I know for a fact, I'm going through this with one of our clients right now, who he's literally having his 2nd round of brain tumors removed right now, just up the road. He's a very high profile client. He's in the news quite a bit. And, he's talking a lot about this right now, but his entire perspective shifted because now it's like, I am so grateful I have the policy. Yes, for all the line of credit, but my gosh, I know my family's taken care of. And even though I was intending on building something that would take care of them, I don't know if I'm going to be here to do that. And so behind me, there is the protection because, my friends, if you're building a real estate portfolio, if you're driving your personal financial plan, you have to ask yourself the very important question: who is the real, or what is the real asset behind everything? And my friend, it is you. It's not the real estate. The real estate is a tool that you're using. You are the asset. And because you are the asset, you must protect yourself and view yourself as an asset and treat yourself as such, from a financial protection standpoint, as well as just a personal health and well-being. Like, you are the asset, treat yourself like the asset.
Yeah, I mean, that's extremely well said. And it's one of those that, you don't want to think about it because it's very doom and gloom, but it's one of the most important things to be able to have buttoned up and dot the I's and cross the T's. Also allows, I can sleep well at night. That's what's great.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I'm growing my assets, growing my balance sheet, but I also know that if something does happen, like, my family's taken care of. And that to me, that's really powerful. So let's, diving in. I mean, wow. I mean, this is the 3rd time that we've been able to do this SOFA Summit here. I mean, when we first met, even before that, right? I mean, the whole economic landscape of just real estate is completely flipped. I mean, before we were in one of these, I think it was a gift from God at the end of the day, how low interest rates were, right, on these loans. And the demand was absolutely insane from investors, right? Yeah. And now you're saying, okay, well, interest rates have risen. So what are you seeing, in that regards, just from are you still growing your portfolio, and how are things going?
100%. I am 100. So my goal, it was really interesting. I went to a conference earlier this year, and I had 32 single family homes in my personal portfolio, as well as, some other things that I had been invested in, as well as my vaults, right? But I had 32 single family homes, and I kind of got to the point where I'm like, that's good enough, right? But I went to this conference where this individual who, I admire and respect quite a bit, talked about what he had built in the game of single family homes in a short period of time. And his portfolio was about 4 times as big as mine, right? And he talked about the tax-free wealth that thing was generating. He just did a bundle his real estate, and he did what am I trying to say? Yeah, cost egg. He did a cost egg, but he also did a cash out refi. He took multi-million out, and he bought himself a cabin up in the woods for his family and all this stuff. And I'm like, my goodness, I'm an idiot. Why did I stop doing something that worked? Like, I have to remind myself a little bit. I'm kind of dumb. So, like, stop being dumb and just keep doing the things that work, right? And so, yeah, I'm buying as much real estate as I can, because here's the mantra that I believe is happening right now. You have to look to be an investor right now and to win in the game right now. You have to look one level deeper. Like, you have to go one step further than we've had to go in years past. Because you mentioned with low interest rates, it was kind of like, why wouldn't you buy real estate? I mean, it's pretty much free money that you're getting. But here's the reality, okay? I really believe the greatest tool that you can use right now is leverage. Okay. And the greatest form of leverage that you and I have access to, yes, is the life insurance. That's part of it. But it is a 30-year fixed home, like 30-year fixed mortgage on a single family residence. That is the greatest tool you and I can use, because what it does for you is it allows you to use your money and lever, right? Take a limited amount of dollars and turn it into a lot of dollars and acquire an asset that you now control. Okay. So if I use a 30-year fixed mortgage to go out and buy a single family home, I don't then have to share with the bank the appreciation. I don't then have to share with the bank the tax benefits or the cash flow or anything like that. I just have to commit to making a fixed payment over 30 years. And Mark, you and I can kind of see into the future a little bit. Like, inflation is here. We're feeling a major impact of it right now. I hope, for the sake of the well-being of our economy and the dollar, I hope it kind of tampers down. But a respectable, like quote unquote, normal rate of inflation is 3 to 4%. Like, that's what we all say is normal, right? So what that ultimately means, if I have a 30-year fixed mortgage, my cost doesn't go up. My mortgage stays fixed, which means 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in, 20 years in, I'm paying the bank back with devalued dollars, with dollars that are becoming more and more and more and more worthless over time. But yet I have an asset that is appreciating. It's going up in value. It's rising because of inflation. Inflation is helping me on the mortgage side, and it's actually massively helping me on the real estate side. So rather than working against inflation, why don't I just align myself with the game that has been created? Like, I didn't create the game, but I want to know the rules of the game so I know how to win. And if I can align myself with those rules of the game right now, my friends, I think one of the greatest wealth transfers in history is happening, because those who know how to play the game, they are using leverage. They are converting worthless dollars into long-term valuable assets, which is real estate. And they're putting a vault in the middle to capture all of the benefits of turning equity into realized cash flow into cash that you constantly keep. And so, my friends, I think right now, don't be on the sidelines. Don't wait. Interest rates honestly don't matter. Now, that's a very bold statement to make. I'm not going to back it up. We have tons of stuff to back it up on our podcasts and videos, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to back it up. But what I'm going to say is it doesn't matter. Like, if inflation is 9% and you get cash flow and tax benefits and all the other things that come with real estate, who cares? Get a 6% mortgage, go buy more real estate, right? Use your dollars wisely, which means don't keep dollars, convert them into long-term assets.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing as well. Just completed a cash out refinance on 3 properties today, bought a property last week. And so it's one of those, you just got to think more long-term. And before it was a lot easier because you just have once in a lifetime low interest rates. So you say, okay, here's the cash flow, makes perfect sense. But we didn't even have to go to that second level of what are the other benefits that we're actually getting, because it didn't matter. The cash flow was so good. And now that was just a gift, right? I mean, if you look at it, I also think today's rates are a gift right now, because if you look at where inflation was 40 years ago, the interest rates back then were in the double digits. So the fact that interest rates right now are only in the 6% range, the world right now, that's another gift, which is absolutely massive, showing that the properties are still cash flow positive. And then you table that and say, okay, what if I don't get any cash flow, right? Like, what's my return? On investment at the end of the day. And you say, well, hey, if I just have a tenant pay down my mortgage over 30 years, it's a 10% return. And if you don't know how to do that math, reach out to us. We'll let you know.
No doubt.
No doubt. That to me, that's my favorite part about this whole thing, at the end of the day. And also what you're saying with inflation, I mean, how much, is a mortgage going to actually be in 30 years? If you're using today's dollar and you have that same amount 30 years later, it's going to be like a gallon of milk in 30 years. Like, I mean, that's what makes it fun, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And so, Mark, I mean, I love what you guys do. I love the education side of it. I love that you bring the real tools to the table, because I can't just walk in to a store and say, hey, give me a 30-year fixed mortgage, right? The only way I get a 30-year fixed mortgage is if I get to tie it to a piece of real estate. And the only way I get financial freedom is if I say, hey, Mark, you're really good at real estate and I want to own my time. How about you sell me the real estate so the bank will give me a mortgage? And how about we all win together? Like, that's truly the definition of a functioning economy, is we're all winning. We're providing good properties for good people living in good areas. I'm winning because I get to use my dollars in a way that I don't have to sit on them and hope that everything works out tomorrow. I get to use leverage to buy an asset. You're winning because you get to execute on what your team is really good at. That's the game here. And I just believe right now, my friends, we are living in an age of inflation. And just like anything, it's going to come, it's going to go. The world will change. Things will go back to whatever version of normal is in the future. But right now, because of this age of inflation, I think a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines just waiting for it to pass. But my friends, the people I know, Mark, the people you know, they're
Yeah.
doubling down, right? They are turning worthless dollars into real assets as fast as they can.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely correct. I mean, I had one person talk to today. He's like, I need 20 houses now. Talked to another
Yeah.
person yesterday, and he goes, I want to buy a house a week for the next year.
Yeah.
And then another guy that just did a $5 million cash out refinance and should close in a month. And so it's like, those are the guys, but we're really seeing that, which I think is really interesting as well. Our larger investors, the guys that have been doing it either longer, so like they've gone through different market cycles before, or just the guys that, I guess just have a different mindset. They're the ones that are doubling down, tripling down. We're working with less clients, but the ones that we are working with, they're scaling.
Well, and here's the frame with that, Mark, that I see. I think a lot of people, the two mentalities, right? I mean, how we view ourselves, like who we think we are and what we think we're capable of will determine what we see in the world, right? And most people don't think they're capable of accomplishing big results. So that's what this show is for. It's to help increase your mindset so you can take an elevated mindset and turn it into a reality for you in life. But here's the reality. Most people right now that I know, they're the ones that are doubling down because they understand the rules of the game. But a lot of people right now, I think they're just trying to survive, right? The people that are doubling down, they're going to thrive in this age of inflation, right? Because now there are more opportunities for them to be in the game because all of the easy real estate investors are sitting on the sideline waiting for it to pass, and they're just trying to survive inflation. But the people who understand the game of inflation, they're saying, hey, give me as many assets as I can. I don't want my dollars sitting on the sideline. I want my dollars converted into assets. So my friends, are you going to survive inflation? Maybe. Or are you going to thrive in inflation? And if you want to thrive in inflation, it is time to double down, learn how leverage works, and get in the game as fast as you can.
Well said. Well said. Well, I appreciate you, Ryan. Love the relationship. It's great that, and we've got hundreds of clients together, which is just really fun, and really appreciate the trust and the relationship, because that's the name of the game, right? It is a little bit more difficult than just go buy houses at the end of the day, right? You got to make sure you have the right people in the right place. And that's what the Sofa Summit is all about, to try to serve this up on a silver platter to just make it easy, so you can focus on your family and your career and just live life, live what that financial freedom means to you. So I appreciate everything you guys do. And for everyone out there on the Sofa Summit, hope you found some value. And if you need any contact information, we'll be sure to pass that around for Ryan. But hey, Ryan, how do they get a hold of you? Anyone here?
And the easiest way to do it, go to Facebook, search up Cash Flow Tactics, or go listen to our podcast, Rise Up, Live Free podcast. That's where we dive into all the concepts that we talk about. But Facebook, Cash Flow Tactics, Rise Up, Live Free podcast, that's the easiest way to get in contact.
Rock and roll. Well, appreciate you, Ryan. Hope you guys like that out there on the Sofa Summit, and off to the next session. Thanks, guys.
What's up, everyone? Sean Taggy here. Today we are down in Hickory Hill, the southeastern, very eastern part of Memphis, Tennessee, in the zip code 38125. So we are here today, and it is windy, and it's 7807 Windy Willow Road, so the name makes sense for the property, I guess. This is a property we just recently bought. It was a slight hoarder house, definitely roughly used and worn and torn. The property was built in 2002, but roughly used. Obviously a 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and we're trying to rent it for $1,800, $1,850, and we'll be selling it around $270,000 or so. So this property's in a really great area and neighborhood. Mark will kind of dive into more of the details on this property and the area, but yeah, we really like this area. It's a nice rental area. So it's on kind of like more kind of closer lot lines, so the houses are really close together. There's pros and cons to that. You don't get as bigger of a yard. Some people don't like that, but a lot of people do like it because they have less yard to mow. It's a little more tucked away, a little more safer, things like that. So Plenty of tenants will be looking to live in this area, in this house. They really like this area because it's kind of more in the suburb area, farther away, and obviously kind of newer built houses, nicer, fresher looking things. So we'll be doing some exterior paint. Obviously a lot of trash outs already occurred on the property, and we'll be putting in a new roof on the property as well. So let's go on inside and check it out. So it just got started renovating. Our crews are actually in here today, just kind of getting all the demo and prep work ready, and trash out obviously for this property. So walking straight in, here's the first half bathroom right over here. As you come in from the garage, that's nice and conveniently located. Another nice thing is when you walk straight in, you're straight to your kitchen. So you can just carry your groceries right on in and plop them all down right here. Got a little dining area. So we're gonna be renovating this kitchen, making it look nice, clean and safe and everything like that. Crews are rolling right now, as you can hear. So countertops, cabinets painted, new countertops, new appliances, things like that. So as you can see, we've prepped all the flooring, so we're gonna put luxury vinyl plank throughout all of this flooring area. Lots of just paint kind of need to be done throughout the house. There's an angle to the kitchen here. We'll check out the backyard since we're down here. So yeah, just a small little backyard. It's nice having a little concrete pad to hang out with. Obviously, a little grill was here previously. So, you know, just some minor paint chipping and things like that we'll be fixing on this house, and some exterior wood and all that. But yeah, nice quiet little place. All right, and then let's, you can kind of see here, it's a little open floor plan up into here with the staircase going up. So let's go check out what's going on upstairs. And Rich is our cameraman, walking through all this perilous, perilous nails and ripped up things. So we'll just try to be a little bit careful going up here. So in this first section over here, we have, I think someone's working in here. Hello, sorry. We got a bathroom. We'll just do a quick video through the bathroom there, okay? So it's a nice, just nice 2002 built bathroom. So here's one of the bedrooms. As you can see, we're replacing all the light fixtures and sockets, light switches, light plugs, and covers throughout the whole house. They're taking all those things off right now, getting ready to put nice new ones on. So yeah, there's the two bedrooms over there, and then over here is the master. So a little kind of couch TV area happening over here. Here I can swing by and... So we will be replacing the HVAC. It's just been really used and everything like that. So complete HVAC package replaced. The water heater will be replaced. Everything like that. I'm gonna do a full reno on here. So here's the master bedroom. We're just gonna come through here. As you can see, our crew's working. Hello, how you guys doing? Okay, and then here's the master bathroom. So kind of nice for the area. It's got a jacuzzi tub, double vanity. We'll just kind of repainting, making everything look nice, fresh and clean. A shower and a walk-in closet. Pretty big closet for the space of the house. So yeah, that's pretty much it. As you can, now here, you know, this is just our opportunity, you know, ceiling here kind of just weathered out. So we're gonna paint over that and just do a lot of treatment on here and make sure this house is nice, clean, and safe for the next tenant. Be cleaning out the shower and everything like that, and fixtures, so. Yeah, there you go. So we look forward to showing you guys the after, and thanks for checking us out.
What a day.
Oh man,
What a day.
wonderful day.
Another one, day 2 in the books. Thank you, everyone that's out there and viewing. We really appreciate you. So, hey, Sean, what'd you learn today?
Man, today was wonderful. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd. I like the numbers. So, I mean, I like the tax part every time. I mean, it's just, you know, 2 things are guaranteed, death and taxes. So why not learn everything you can about taxes? Because it's going to happen always. And the more and more you get advanced in real estate, the more you're going to need to take advantage of those tax advantages that are in real estate that are legally, morally, and ethical allowed to do.
Yep.
You just need to know them and use them to your advantage, and that helps you in making financial decisions. Whether this investment or that one, you got to consider the tax advantage as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, Chris Picuro, he's my personal CPA, so I've used him for multiple years, so can definitely vouch for him. And if you're paying income tax on these rental properties, something is wrong and you need to reach out to an individual like Chris, because you should not be having to pay any taxes on this cash flow, which is powerful, right? That just increases your return on investment at the end of the day. I'd say that my favorite part has to do with the talk that Aaron Chapman had about financing, how to use a conventional loan, putting 20% down and financing the rest, financing the other 80% of the purchase. And when you use opium, as my dad always said, it's his favorite drug, opium, other people's money. And when you look at the actual returns and break it down, I'm more than happy to have a one-on-one conversation to kind of explain this whole process to you. But I like to be conservative, and let's just say, hey, you don't get any appreciation, you don't get any cash flow, you don't have any rent increases for 30 years. You still get a 10% average annual return by just having a tenant pay down your mortgage over the 30 years. And to me,
amazing.
That's powerful. That's your essentially worst case scenario,
Right.
And bare bottom bones. So really powerful to use that leverage, and I think that's just a great opportunity. So moving forward, man, we have the final day. Next Sunday,
Yes.
Same time, same place, 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. So what are we going to talk about?
Yes, to get you prepped for next week, it's actually my personal favorite. It's multifamily real estate investing. So trading those green houses for a big red hotel, which a lot of our investors are actually, now they've been investing with us for 5-10 years, they're kind of ready to start moving to that next level. So we talk about how you can invest alongside with us through a multifamily syndication, which Mark will explain what that is. And then also we'll give you some real life case studies of our multifamilies we have bought and invested in and what they're looking at today, how we were able to refinance them and pull out almost 80% of our initial investment in them. This isn't a solicitation to invest with us, it's just for educational purposes, but just wanted to fill you in on that.
Definitely. Then we're also going to talk about 1031 exchanges, how to keep more of your money and pay less in taxes. And so that's a great process. It's a lot easier than you think. We actually have a special program for 1031 investors. So if you own an asset right now in California, on the coast, something that's appreciated greatly, this is the type of session for you. Then also, if you have a retirement account, a 401k and an IRA, and you feel like you don't have any control, you feel like you don't know why it's going up or down, or you're just not happy with the returns that you have because you don't want it tied to the stock market, we're going to show you the exact process about how you can take control of that account and use that to acquire more doors and more real estate.
Great, and thank you again to our sponsor, Delta Title Services. We're super grateful for you guys for helping us out today and the partnership we have with you.
Yeah, and if you haven't done so already, please make sure to smash that subscribe button to join our YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you go to our website at memphisinvestmentproperties.net to join our buyers list. And we'll also make sure to have a really great comment, have some feedback there in the comment section, and we'll be sure to pick one lucky winner for each for
a
Yeti once
Random.
we are completed at the end of the summit.
Thank you so much, guys. See you tomorrow.
See you next week.